What's up, everybody, and welcome to the Golf 360 podcast. I'm the host, Pete Popovich. So you may be asking yourself, what is Golf 360? And Golf 360 is a show that was designed to introduce you to people associated with the game of golf to help you improve not only at your game, but also your life. Almost all of our guests are from within the industry in some way, shape, or form, but some of the guests we have are from outside the industry, and it mainly revolves around the business world with a few others scattered in here and there. Now, all of the guests that we have a few things in common. One, they all were highly successful and accomplished in their field. Two, each has something to pass along that will help you in your game and your life. And three, they were all more than willing to give back by passing along the things that they use to help them in their career, and even some of the mistakes that they made so that others don't make them in their journey. So I hope you find listening to them as enjoyable as I did interviewing them, and that each and every one of you benefits from the information that they so willingly and graciously pass along. This podcast is brought to you in part by Just Thrive Probiotic. You may be surprised to learn that your digestive system is the key to creating and maintaining the quality of your physical, mental, and emotional health, and it's one of the body's most essential systems. That's why the majority of nutritionists today highly recommend probiotics as an indispensable nutritional supplement. As a discriminating consumer, you've probably been searching for a probiotic that is proven, potent, and effective, and you found it. Just Thrive is your best choice for maintaining a healthy lifestyle. Just Thrive Probiotic captures the power of hundreds of thousands of years of nature's design with a specialized bacillus strain formulation that guarantees survivability through the stomach and upper digestive system. Supports optimum gut health, digestive health, immune health, and delivers antioxidants. Great for adults, kids, and the whole family. Use promo code GOLF360 at www.thriveprobiotic.com for 10% off your... This podcast is brought to you in part by Old South Golf Links. A short ride across a bridge from Hilton Head Island is one of the area's finest golf courses and a hidden treasure. Set up on towering pines and ancient oaks with sweeping marsh vistas, truly makes Old South Golf Links a one-of-a-kind golfing experience. The Clyde Johnson design was named one of the top 10 new public courses when it opened, and it also takes full advantage of the natural beauty of the Low Country. Old South is a fun and unique challenge for golfers of every skill level and a favorite of both locals and visitors. Whether it's your first time here or you're a regular, you'll be treated and feel like family. From the bag drop to check-in at the fully stocked pro shop with both men's and women's apparel, to breakfast or lunch before or after your round, the staff is always ready and willing to help. Experience for yourself why Old South is one of the premier golf courses in the Hilton Head area and why it will quickly become a favorite of yours too. Visit them in person or online at www.oldsouthgolf.com, or to make it tee time, simply call the pro shop at 843-785-5353. What is up, golfers, especially those of you who are into training and nutrition and supplementation, wanting to take your game to the next level? Today's guest has got everything that you're going to need to do for that. And he is absolute genius at it. His name is Preston Greene, and he is currently the strength and conditioning coach at the University of Florida down there in Gainesville for the Gators. Now, Preston is not your average strength and conditioning coach because while many teenagers were out there working and eager to improve on their golf swing, their bench press, their jump shot, or their squat, Preston was studying how to get them to do that. And he began this when he was about 14 years old, and ever since he has been helping athletes to improve at all aspects of their training and their sport. He has worked at some of the most prestigious universities in the country, Clemson University, Stanford University, the University of Arizona, among others, and it all led to his current position at the University of Florida. He has helped countless athletes achieve success at all levels, and some of the highest levels as well, from collegiate championships to the professional ranks in the NHL and the NBA. And he's even helped to coach some Olympians in their quest and their successes in gaining medal status. Not only does he hold a degree in health science, but he also has a master's in applied kinesiology and sports management. He holds numerous certifications and memberships, including a National Strength and Conditioning Association, a performance enhancement specialist from the National Association of Sports Medicine. And one of the most impressive, he is one of only 16 internationally certified PICP Level 5 coaches. Now, PICP is the Poliquin International Certification Program. I will have a link to what Level 5 status requirements are in the show notes, but that is from his mentor and the world-renowned and legendary coach, Charles Poliquin. Preston and I have an amazing discussion that revolves around all these things: his early start in the field, his apprenticeship, and being mentored by Coach Poliquin. We also talk about sports-specific training, and then we get pretty deep into the discussion on nutrition and supplements, and how in today's nutrient-depleted world that they are musts if anybody, regardless of skill level, is to perform to their potential and at the highest levels and do so successfully. So this was just an awesome interview with Preston. I'm so thankful that he was able to make time on 3 separate occasions so that we could get it all in. He gives a ton of great insight in the world of training and what everyone can do to improve. So please give it up for today's guest, Preston Greene. All right, we are live, rocking and rolling. I've got today's a very special guest, Preston Greene. He's a director of strength and conditioning at Florida University. He is a super stud in the
University of Florida.
I'm sorry,
They're
University
really
of Florida.
Picky about that one.
All right, University of Florida. I pulled that off of one of your I think it was the university website for your bio, and they had Florida. I'm like, that doesn't make sense, but if they got it, that's what I'll go with. So my mistake. But Preston, thanks for making the time. You've got a super busy schedule. A lot of people I get on the show are very busy, but you are like super busy.
Absolutely. Well, I appreciate you having me first and foremost. It's an honor to talk to you, and hopefully I can give you guys a little bit of insight and hopefully have some sort of some impact on some people.
How much with the schedule you have with the travel and the you lecture and do courses, if I'm not mistaken, and then you have preseason, you have in season, out of season, and so on. How do you devote time to your continuing research or education or reading or things like that?
It's an ever-evolving process. One of the things I like to do is in the mornings, I like, as far as my schedule, I like to get up early each and every day and devote some sort of time to reading. I think there's a book about some of the most successful people in business or what have you, and one of the things they do is they accomplish a lot of tasks before most people even eat breakfast. So I think by getting up in the morning and setting some time aside to read and research and things like that, it's a way to be very, very productive from a time management and continuing education standpoint. Also, throughout the day, one of the things I take a lot of pride in is instead of spending 30, 45 minutes, an hour on social media, scrolling up and swiping right and all that stuff, I like to devote my quote-unquote downtime to reading something where I think it's really important from a research standpoint, because this field's ever evolving and changing each and every day.
Mm-hmm.
I try and read at least one research article a day on top of different books and things like that. And then lastly, I think being connected with people in the industry who I respect and have a professional relationship with, just trying to remain in constant dialogue with them on what they're doing, what they've found that's working, what's new, things like that. So those will be my 3 pieces of advice as far as kind of staying on top of the business and the industry and things like that.
Yeah, when I was younger, one of my friends here in Hilton Head, we used to always go work out, but half the time he wouldn't go with us. And I'd say, well, why aren't you going? He said, well, I went this morning. I said, well, when did you go? He said, 5 a.m. And I'm like, well, why do you go so early? He said, because nobody's calling me or messaging me or anything at 5 a.m. He goes, I get 10 times more done before 8 o'clock than you guys do the rest of the day. And it
exactly.
And it hit me in the head. And I'm a morning person, so I've been working on, that's one of my challenges, is to get up in the morning and do more. I seem to work better in the evening. Maybe I'm fighting myself. Maybe I should just stick with my strengths and try to improve those best I can. But I have noticed that trend with people doing things in the morning, or at least when they're not bombarded by tons of information, especially in today's texting, messaging world.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things also I think is important is most people set their alarm to go to bed. Set their alarm to wake up in the morning.
Mm-hmm.
I like to teach my players and talk about it and apply the same principle to my life, is instead of worrying about what time you're going to wake up in the morning, set your alarm to go to bed at night. Go to bed early and establish those type of habits. And I think that goes a long way to having a productive day and routine and things like that. I think that's really, really important.
Yeah, it seems like routines, and some of the kids you work with, meaning college level age, probably have to learn that. I'm in my late 40s, so routines are kind of commonplace. But do you find that is trying to teach these kids routine is one of the challenges, as much as anything else?
Yes, absolutely. Not just from a generalization, general standpoint, and not just because of the generation that they're from, but it's just the society that they live in right now is it's backwards of what they, should be doing, eating wise, sleep wise, recovery wise, things like that. So it is a everyday nuance and battle of just trying to change one thing at a time. I don't like to overload them with information and give a guy, here's 5 things you need to do, or here's 7 things you need to do. It's try and change one behavior at a time.
Mm-hmm.
It's much more productive than overloading them with, here's what's messed up in your life, here's what you need to do, this is what you need to do to be successful from a performance standpoint. The average attention span for people today is 10 seconds. 10 years ago it used to be 30 seconds. So when you're trying to establish habits and routines like that, you have to be really simplistic and keep it short and precise and to the point. So I think if you can just focus on one thing at a time, one behavior, master that, and then you can go into the next thing.
I would have to say the multiplier from the kids that I work with who were very good in high school and then they college golf and then they turned pro, going through that sequence of events that one of the multiplier was you, and you can speak to this and give me your ideas on the topic. When you're dealing with highly gifted athletes, that they've gotten to a very high level without having any of that routine, and it's almost like there's a kickback that's like, well, why do I have to do this? I'm going to achieve anyway.
Yeah, absolutely, and that gets into the argument of talent and things like that, but there's a good book that I just read called Range from David Epstein, who wrote Sports Gene, and
I just finished Sports Gene. That was awesome.
Go into the next one, Range. It's fantastic. It basically talks about should you specialize or should you generalize. It's kind of the Tiger Woods, Roger Federer argument. Mm-hmm. And in my world, with specific to collegiate athletes, everyone is good, everyone's talented, and there's so much parity now in collegiate sports where my argument is, what are you doing to separate yourself from those other guys? Because everyone's talented, everyone's good, but if you really want to be great and you really want to excel in your sport, then you need to separate yourself from a work standpoint with respect to training right, eating right, sleeping right. I tell our guys, you guys all want to be a pro. Well, I want you to be a professional when you're outside of our building. Like be a pro when you walk out those doors. So recover, sleep, live right, eat right, do the right things. And I think that's where you can kind of gain an advantage from a competitive standpoint and from a performance standpoint.
Yeah, I didn't. I was guilty of the earlier where I said, okay, what am I going to eat right for? I mean, I can overcome. Right, I had that typical athlete's mentality. I can overcome that just by focusing more, training harder, whatever. And got together with a trainer out at that's in Charleston. He's a Czech practitioner, amongst other things, strength conditioning coach. And And the first thing he looked at, he goes, you're so inflamed and your diet's so bad. And I know that just looking at you. And so we spent a good year and a half because my vice is cookies and pie, baked goods. And I see that and I just melt. It's like kryptonite.
Yeah.
But the year and a half later, it was the mental focus, the capacity, the endurance, everything else was so much better. And I think I ended up getting player of the year locally that year, but it was night and day. And I'm like, holy cow, it's like a whole new door open for me.
Yeah, you don't realize how you're actually supposed to feel and how good you actually should feel until you take some of those inflammatory foods out of your diet and you start eating right for your type and things like that, where you don't realize like how sick you actually are and how inflamed you are and how fatigued you are and so forth till you start eating right. That's one of the ways we get our guys to buy in is we do a food intolerance test on each guy, and it basically shows you what foods are having a negative response, not from an allergy standpoint, but whether it's joint pain or brain fog or GI distress or lethargy, whatever it may be. When they start eliminating some of those foods, it's like, wow, I never knew this was how I was supposed to feel, or I never knew, I could have this focus and this level of energy and endurance and things like that. So, but yeah, it's amazing when you start eating correctly and, start taking the right nutrients according to your metabolic profile and blood chemistry and things like that. Because the average person only eats 17 foods. There's over 150 foods in the world, but once you start eating right, it's amazing how it can impact your body composition and energy levels and level focus and work capacity and things like that.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And I've got, because you're so well versed on that nutrition and training and supplements. I don't want to spoil it and get into too much of that now. I want to save that for later so that they at least have to hear some of your story first.
Sure.
Did you? I know you went to Clemson, but did you grow up in South Carolina?
No. I originally, see if you can follow me here because it's quite an extensive story. But I originally was born in Fort Benning, Georgia. My father was in the military, and went from there to Germany, went from there to New Jersey. I lived in Norfolk Beach, Virginia, everywhere. And then pretty much for the most of my late childhood, I think from 4th grade on, I grew up in South Atlanta, Georgia. And then my father was a Clemson alum, which was 2 hours away, and so I kind of grew up going to all the sporting events there on the weekends. And then from there, I went to university there from 1995 to 1999. And that's when I first got into strength coaching and things like that, and the golfing world and so forth. And then, see if you can follow me here on the map, I did my graduate work at the University of Minnesota. Then I went to the University of Arizona for 3 years. Then I took the director's job at the University of North Carolina, Charlotte. Then I moved to Stanford, and there's a story behind all these places.
You just don't go like a state away. You like going countries away or hemispheres
yeah,
away.
Absolutely. Coast to coast, hot to the snow to the desert. So I was out at Stanford, out in California. Then I had an opportunity to go back to Clemson, and then a couple years later, Billy Donovan hired me here at the University of Florida, where this will be my my 9th season here. So every move had a reason and so forth. But yeah, I grew up pretty much in Georgia, and then I started my journey all over the United States, going from university to university and progressing and growing as a coach, and having an experience at each place that impacted me into the coach that I am today.
When you were at Stanford, was Conrad Ray the golf coach?
Yes.
There?
Yep, sure was.
Conrad was, I think, the 3rd episode I had, second or third
or
fourth. Yeah, I mean, Conrad lived in Hilton
winner.
Head for a while. We used to play. We were both playing Chasing the Dream for a number of years and played a lot of golf together.
Oh, wonderful! He's a winner. He is
great.
a winner.
And it was,
he's a winner.
It was, I think I think the very first question I asked him was if the team had another national championship in him this year. Sure enough, they did.
That's great. That's great. I've been fortunate to be around a lot of great coaches, like really, really, really good coaches who understand the importance of training the right way and sports performance and things like that. So, I can't take credit for all of the success, but I've been really lucky to be around some phenomenal head coaches.
Was having a dad in the military, is that kind of where your attraction started with physical fitness and training, strength and conditioning, or was there something else?
You know what? That's a great question. One of the things I remember, growing up, as a little kid, was he would always have to get up in the morning and exercise and things like that. And I remember he would be training for like his physical fitness test back then. So he would be doing push-ups and sit-ups. So I gauged a lot of interest in the fitness world back then at such a young age, when he was in the military.
Mm-hmm.
And then I started reading strength training when I was 14 years old. I went to a library, and I came across an article from Coach Poliquin, which was obviously my mentor, and it was in the Australian Journal of Sport. And from that age, I was hooked. I wanted to start lifting weights in the garage, just like most kids my age would do, and so forth. And so that's kind of how it all began. And once I got into that, and it was over with. I was hooked.
Where do you think your drive came from? Is it that you hate not to be successful, or is it a high desire to succeed?
A little bit of both. a little bit of both. I was taught from such a young age just about discipline and work ethic and habits and things like that. I think that just carried over to just never ever wanting to lose, just always being competitive and be the best that I could be and ultimately win and compete. And for whatever reason, I don't know. It's a great question, but I'm one of the few people, I think, or I'm fortunate enough where I knew what I wanted to do at such a young age. This is my 24th year of coaching, but I knew when I was 14 years old of that age of, hey, this is what I want to do, and I want to excel in it. I want to be the greatest, and I want to compete for championships at the highest level. So that was just instilled in me at such a young age of just, being competitive and wanting to win and, not bouncing around career-wise of, figuring out what I wanted to do in life. I was just always been driven in this at such a young age. I was kind of born that way.
Did you play golf as a kid at all?
No. Thankfully, no. I would not be allowed. I would not be allowed back on the course. Just a little bit here and there. And, people ask me about basketball also. I mean, I've always been in the sports, and had a, very diverse background and trained every sport pretty much. But I've always been, I guess, connected and interested in golf because it's such a different. It was such a challenge where back then at that age, golfers did not strength train. It was a big no. So I kind of enjoyed the challenge of that, of trying to bridge the gap. Back then of training the right way for the sport and everything that I had learned from Charles, of structural balance and, strength, length, tension relationships and things like that. I wanted to have that challenge of like, it's okay for golfers to get stronger. Like, it's okay for them to strength train the right way and do mobility the right way and things like that. So I just enjoy the challenge. Same thing with basketball. Back then, like, basketball players didn't lift weights.
Yeah, you didn't want to throw off your timing and your shot. I mean, I played.
Yeah, it was only football and things like that. So for whatever reason, I chose the two hardest sports, and I just enjoyed the challenge of it, and it's a big puzzle to me. Just the nature of the sport. It's each guy is different and imbalanced and needs different ratios of certain things with respect to body composition and power output and how that translates to club head speed and things like that. So,
do you see
I enjoy the challenge.
Do you see it at the elite levels? We see it on the PGA Tour a lot, and there's a lot of discussion about it. But in collegiate is maybe not as much because they're not developed as much yet. But do you see that it is, or have an opinion on it, if weight training to some extent or some of the training has gone too far? In other words, is there a need for 400-pound deadlift or 300-pound bench press? To answer the first part of your question, it has trickled down into college now, where each, at this level, these guys all have their swing coach now, and they have their workout guy and their physio now, and it's trickled down, to that level because it's such a competitive world and competitive sport and just the nature of it. Mm-hmm.
But to answer the question of is it too much, to be honest, it really depends on the individual, because there's not one secret formula and one secret recipe across the board, where some guys need to drive up their relative strength scores, which is they need to get stronger with respect to their not increasing their body weight. Some guys need to put on what I call functional hypertrophy, where they need to get stronger, and they also need to put on lean mass because they need to be able to handle the endurance and work capacity standpoint of playing 18, 36 holes a day, and especially in college when you have to carry your own bag and things like that. So, but of course, as a professional ages, what got you to your strength norms from when you were 18 years old, you need to train differently as you progress to a 24-year-old. And then if I had a 24-year-old, I wouldn't train him the same way I trained him when he was in high school. You know what I mean? So there's different styles of training as you age, but there's also different styles of training as you achieve your goals with respect to strength and flexibility and power and things like that. So as you age chronologically and your game, evolves also as you age, I think you also need to be smart and adapt your style of training. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally. And
So
I understand because I've read so much on Poliquin stuff. But can you, not to divert off the topic, but as a tangent, can you kind of explain the difference between chronological age, biological age, and training age? Just so the listeners might have it. I mean, as briefly as you can. I mean, just so people understand what you mean by when you say training age.
Okay, so training age has nothing to do with your chronological age. I have 18-year-old golfers come in and they have a training age of 5, which means they've been doing physical training for 5 years, right?
Mm-hmm.
I may have a 19-year-old come in and who has a training age of 0. He's never, ever touched any type of strength training apparatus, whether it's a machine, dumbbell, barbell, whatever. So they're completely irrespective of each other. Now, as you, as an athlete, start training at age 0, so say you're 18 years old and this is your first workout, your year of training with me is going to be all general preparation, corrective exercises, strength, structural balance training, where I'm trying to achieve certain strength ratios respective of different musculatures and things like that, before you get into more advanced type of training. So as your training age goes up, there's certain paradigms and parameters you need to follow with respect to the amount of weight you're lifting, which is called intensity, and also the amount of volume or repetitions that you're doing. So it's an ever-changing puzzle, as your training age goes up and also as your chronological age or your actual birth age goes up.
Yeah, I don't think a lot of people understand the adaptation of that. So I was talking to Mike Carroll. Mike has Fit for Golf out in Newport Beach. I think it was yesterday we did his interview. And just so long as your progression is a continual incline. You might have dips here and there as maybe you're fatigued or you overworked yourself, but just so that people who are listening understand a little better, as you age and as your advancement in training goes up, then it's an evolving mechanism that how you train and how much weight you lift and the sets and the eccentric versus concentric and everything gets modified. Is that right?
Yeah, exactly. Just because you're 35 years old doesn't mean you should not train at a high intensity with respect to weight. Mm-hmm. And just because you're 18 years old doesn't mean that you have to only do high reps. It's respective to each guy, again, according to their training goals, who needs what. That's where you can really get specific and make some serious increases in performance, is by taking the guesswork out of it and not having one magical program. That's the job as a coach of you have to determine who needs what. And those goals will always change as you age and as your training age increases.
Because they adapt, right?
Correct. They're going to adapt. It takes on average, it takes a person 3 weeks to adapt to something. Now, we'll get into this later, but one of the ways we even get further in that is by training for your neurotransmitter type. Every individual has a certain neuro makeup with respect to dopamine, acetylcholine, GABA, and serotonin. It determines who you are, and that can tell you how you need to train. Who needs a lot of sets, who needs low volume, who needs high intensity, who's mixed, things like that. So that's where he can get really, really specific and make a substantial greater level of progress than somebody else, mm-hmm. which is a really, really interesting. But yeah, so it may take you 3 weeks to adapt to something, and you need to go into something else. But it doesn't have to be extreme changes. It needs to be, changes that are from a scientific and educational standpoint of getting to that end result and achieving your goal. Because that's the thing about golf is they're in season year round. They play the sport pretty much year round, so you have to be really specific of when you're going to train more aggressively in the fall or spring or summer, things like that.
Yeah, that always made it difficult with some of the college kids I had. Was like you said, they're playing year round. It's like, okay, you want to make these modifications to your swing, you're going to have to take some time off to do it.
Exactly.
You can't just keep playing and, I need the experience of playing. Well, no, you just played 15 tournaments. You can take a month off so we can make these changes, and then you can get in the gym and strengthen what you need to strengthen, stretch where you need to stretch, and so forth. It's like they get this mindset that they always have to be playing or else they're not advancing.
Yeah, exactly. As long as that dialogue's open and you have that communication with the athlete, that's first and foremost priority. But just because you're playing competitively in season doesn't mean you can't still train. It just needs to be different than what you would be doing in the off season. Mm-hmm. And I think that's where it's really important for longevity and durability, because obviously the golfer that is the most durable and the most healthy is obviously going to be the most successful. By training the right way in season, people like to call it maintenance. I'm not a big fan of that word because you can still make progress in season, but your goals are going to have shifted than what they would be in the off season or preseason and things like that.
Yeah, your maintenance would be more off season training, wouldn't it? Like, so you're never taking 100% time to just shut down for weeks at a time. So
not unless it's for rehab. No, absolutely.
Right.
But you can do both. You can do both. The human body is amazing when you put the right nutrients in it and you get the right sleep, and you can recover muscularly and neurally. There's two components to it. Where the nervous system takes 7 times longer than the muscular system, but when you combine all those pieces in the right way, at a high level, you can be great at both. You can train hard and you can practice hard and compete hard.
What is? I mean, there's so much involved, and you've got such a vast amount of knowledge. What is it about your job that excites you the most? And what gets you to jump out of bed at 5 o'clock in the morning?
5. That's my second breakfast. Just just making guys better, having an impact. I drive into work every morning thinking of, hey, how can I make this guy better and this guy better and this guy better? And, I go to bed at night thinking, how their training went and maybe this would work, and just the competitiveness and just the ability to have an impact on these guys. It's inspiring, and it's fun, and it's challenging, and it's exciting, of making guys better and then seeing them progress and having success. That's rewarding, not so much by, this guy's going to move this amount of weight today, because, I train athletes. I don't train power lifters or weightlifters, but it's just exciting just to have an impact on them and watch them make progress and then apply it to their sport. To me, that's fun.
Yeah, I can see that. I mean, it's, I guess fundamentally and principally, it's the same in instruction, where you take somebody who's not, they have the ability to do it. They might not even know they have the ability to do it, but then you show them how to do it, and the exhilaration that they get once they achieve something is the best part of my job.
Yeah, when they come in and into the gym the next day and, hey, coach, I feel better, or my driving performance is getting better, I'm hitting the ball further, or I feel healthier, or I slept better last night because you told me to do this. I mean, that's rewarding to me, and that's motivating to me. Mm-hmm. It's like, okay, that's great. Let's get to the next thing now. Let's get into this next. Because there's so much out there, and it would be like you teaching me how to hit a fade. Like, it may take months and months and months, but it's a challenge. It would be exciting, to you to watch me make progress. It's the same thing when my athletes make little pieces of progress here and there. It's rewarding, but it's also, there's such a vast world out there with the performance aspect, and people are so uneducated on it, where when you keep it simple and again, try and achieve one thing at a time, and then you get into the next thing. There's thousands of goals out there that you can accomplish.
Yeah, I always abided by the 4 levels of learning, where you've got unconsciously incompetent, where someone doesn't even know how bad they are at something yet, right? And they come, so yeah, obviously exactly. they come to you for help, and then they're consciously incompetent. I mean, they know that they don't know how to do it, but they're learning. So like if you're showing me a training how to do a certain lift, or I'm showing you how to hit that fade, and then you become consciously competent, where you know how to do it, but you have to think about it. So yep. You've developed it. So if we're working on your fade, you can hit it on the range, but you've got to think about it okay, I got to do this, and this. But then you want to get to that level where you're unconsciously competent, where you can step up on any tee you want to, and without even thinking how to do it, you can hit that cut around the corner and shave off 30 yards of a hole.
Yeah, it's all about establishing habits. That's one of the things I learned is, most people think it takes, 7 days or 3 weeks to establish a habit, where it's proven now research-wise it takes at least 66 days to establish a habit. Mm-hmm. And I think so that by learning that information, it's helped me become much more patient as a coach. Much more patient, where you want to progress an athlete into the next thing and next thing and next thing, but whether it's nutritionally or sleep or recovery or whatever it may be, but 66 days is a long time to establish a habit.
Yeah, so I think it might be even longer the older you get.
Yeah, it's very, very true. Very, very true.
Let me ask you about how your industry has changed since the last 10, 20 years, because in Poliquin's program, I mean, he was very adept on the Bulgarians' information going back to the turn of the century, and the Russians and the Germans. So you were very privy to that through your education and being around him. So how has the industry changed for the better with the use of technology, yet still incorporate those very basic principles that have been used for now 100 years to make athletes better?
Yeah, I mean, I was taught that there's nothing new in strength training since 1896. Mm-hmm. Those guys, but yeah, I mean, by him being self-taught of several foreign languages and translating it, that he was way, way, way ahead of his time. But one of the things that's been instilled in me as a coach, from him is, There's been hundreds of new innovations of equipment and machines and stuff, but the two things that have stood the test of time for hundreds of years is the dumbbell and the barbell. And obviously, beyond that, there's a whole new world with technology out there, but I think it's really important to be able to deviate between, what data is useless and what are you just having to have, and, what data are you collecting, just to say you do it and things like that. So there's two pieces that I get into, where one of the things that's been around, like I said, is, in golf, it's still not a main belief in the world, but it's proven from my data with my athletes is chin-up strength is correlated to club head speed. So like golfers, it is okay, does not make you a bad person, to improve your lat strength. Okay, so if you can improve your chin-up strength, which is obviously your lat strength, your club head speed is going to increase. Okay, that's important to remember, because that is proven. You don't hit the ball with your arms; you use your torso.
Mm-hmm.
So the abdominals need to be strong in extreme ranges of motion. Where back in the day it was just statically, isometrically, whether it was bridging or planking, things like that, where now there's a whole new world of torso training with respect to the trunk or the core. I like to say trunk. Where it has to be strong in extreme ranges of motion. So that's changed and evolved a little bit. But the last component to that, before I get into technology, is the one thing that stood the test of time in proven in golf performance is grip strength. Okay, so the more you can improve your grip strength, the more power you're going to be able to generate in your swing. So thick grip dumbbells, and then we like to use thick grip apparatuses for different vertical pulling and chin-up variations and things like that. And then obviously you can train the grip every day as long as you do something different with respect to whether it's extension or flexion or pronation, supination, and many other things.
Ulnar deviation.
Yeah, exactly. So that stood the test of time with the barbell and dumbbell, is your chin-up strength for club head speed, and then abdominals and extreme ranges of motion, whether it's you have to train them concentrically, eccentrically, and isometrically. And then thirdly, grip strength is key. So those would be the three components of strength training that have stood the test of time. But there's a whole new world out there, like you mentioned, with technology, as far as power output, bar speed, different things like that, with resistance, whether it's pneumatic, things like that. But as far as technology with respect to golf, I'm more concerned about HRV, the heart rate variability, from a recovery standpoint.
Mm-hmm.
To me, that's information and data that is important that can go into your training. Because if an individual is stuck in sympathetic, he needs to do more of X, Y, and Z, where if this guy is parasympathetic, then he would need to do this, and this. So I like technology. I like where it's gone, but I think the market is flooded with stuff that is useless, because it looks cool and it looks sexy, but it doesn't mean there's going to be a direct transfer to the type of training you need to do. I think it's independent on the coach, where you could have a coach who has all this data and all this technology, and he's compiling all this information, but he cannot write a decent program to get a golf athlete strong and healthy.
Yeah,
Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think so in the golf side, I think a lot of the tech and measuring devices that have been used, they came out, and I think it was some of the people using it were not educated enough to. They said, well, this is. I mean, it was groundbreaking, right? I mean, it's a phenomenal way to measure.
Oh yeah, it's unbelievable.
But they were saying, this is going to change the entire game. Maybe it has. I'm not here to argue that point. But I think that the tune has somewhat changed over the course of time, at least for the masses, in that while it is a phenomenal device, that if the person that's utilizing that information doesn't know how to utilize it, it's basically worthless and could work to the student's detriment.
Exactly.
If
Exactly.
you analyze it wrong, well, you're going to give the person the wrong thing. That's not even going to not help them. I mean, it might put them out of the game. It might injure them.
Yeah, exactly. The other thing is you can have all this cool stuff and it's groundbreaking and earth-shattering, but if you have an athlete who's still 18% fat and he's almost morbidly obese, and you're not training the right way and making the right nutritional strategies for fat loss and brain nutrition for performance, then all that stuff's irrelevant.
Mm-hmm.
Because that athlete's not going to perform at the ability that he should, and then, like we talked about, he's not going to have the level of endurance and durability to compete at a high level for a long time. Now, there's always an outlier, and there's always,
it's always a John Daly.
Exactly. Like, okay, I get that, but he's 1 in 100,000. He's
Mm-hmm.
not your average individual. So I think you got to be smart and have a combination of training the right way, but also utilizing the right technology for the right reasons, and not just having this device and doing this just to say you do it because it looks cool and it sounds cool.
It's interesting that you bring up the lat strength and the hand and forearm strength because so many people are caught up now in the ground reaction forces and doing deadlifts and squats, which I think are great exercises in particular for core strength. But going back, to the probably early 2000s, maybe mid 2000s, the data and the guys I was working with, we kind of put together that, or had read or studied or whatever you want to call it, that within the swing, I could be wrong because this is again going back a number of years, that one of the first muscles to fire for a right-handed golfer on the takeaway was I think it was the pec. I can't remember which side it was, and then the first muscle to fire on the downswing was the lat, because it activated I think it was the right lat because it activated the left hand, the lead hand.
Correct. It's contralateral.
Yes, contralateral. That's right. So so we were
Correct.
right.
Yeah, and that's here's the reality of the situation is my job as a coach. I'm going to tell the athlete what he needs, not what he wants to hear.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so or else he can go somewhere else or go have someone else train him. I don't care. So as a coach, you need to have the ability, like we talked about, of, again, I keep saying who needs what, but that's the key component to this, is determining who needs fat loss, who needs to drive up the norms in the deadlift, who needs to drive up the norms in the chin-up. That goes into the evaluation and assessment of the athlete. And that's going to dictate what type of training you're going to do. We're going to achieve that goal, and then we're going to get into the next type of training to achieve the next goal. But that has stood the test of time, is chin-up strength for club head speed and grip strength. That by far would be the two components. If it's done correctly, and if it's done through the right progressions, because not everyone can jump up and do a chin-up, but that goes into the whole art of coaching and style of training and program design and all that stuff.
Mm-hmm. So if most of the next groundbreaking things or great things come from the periphery and not from, let's say, within the norm, is there anything that you see in the training side that's on the periphery that, let's say, the average Joe is not might not know about yet? I mean, you're around it. I mean, it's your job. You're around it every day. You're expert at it.
Not so much from the training world, but I think from the nutrition and supplementation world, there's a lot of really, really cool stuff out there that you can now do with respect to studying the athlete's blood chemistry and things like that. That's a really exciting, cool new world where there's some really impactful stuff that's out there.
Mm-hmm.
So, by doing a comprehensive metabolic profile on a guy, you can determine who needs what with respect to certain nutrients and supplements and things like that. So, for example, if, from a performance aspect, these athletes are doing all this training now, and then they're going out and playing 36 holes a day and practicing for 5 hours. But if you're not recovering from that, none of that's going to matter. So by studying their blood chemistry, you can tell who's deficient in what, who's excessive in what, and it takes the guesswork out of what type of nutrients you should take from a recovery aspect. So for tissue repair, obviously zinc is huge in that, and magnesium's really, really important. So you can see their levels and then take countermeasures to get those levels back into the norm where they should be. And that's really, really cool stuff where you can start seeing some serious recovery rates, and then that translates to the ability to train harder and more efficient and then recover faster and things like that.
For the guy or girl at home that's listening to this, or they're driving to work and they're listening, where would, if someone wanted to do to find out if they're proficient, deficient in minerals, vitamins, supplementation, diet, is there a blood test? Like I remember SpectraCell used to be one of the high-ranking ones. Are they? But now again, I'm dating myself. Are they still a prominent player in the game, or is there other places to go?
Well, I don't want to endorse anybody, but that's funny you brought that up. At Clemson, we used to use them back in the day. But anyone can just go to their general practitioner or physician and get a comprehensive profile, and it will test for pretty much everything. And then that's when I would do the lab interp and things like that. So
but they would still need someone like you to interpret the data, or their doctor could do it.
It depends who the doctor is.
That wasn't my fault. You're right. If they're into you got to keep your vitamin D intake at 500 a day, it's like, no, you can take it up 2,500 to 5,000.
Yeah, like the range for vitamin D is 30 to 100. I prefer my guys to be about 80. Where if if someone's at 35, that's horrific. But a lot of physicians would not consider that low. But I would prefer to. I do the lab interps myself. But you can just go get a general, physical or whatever, and request a comprehensive profile. But the thing with lab testing is, just because you're not low or deficient in something, you have to look at it in quadrants. So there's 4 quadrants to it. So just because it's not low, you may be trending low. So I like to look for trends in my athletes of, when I continually do their blood work, I can see the shifts of, okay, you're not low, but you're trending low, so we need to do this. Or you're not excessive, you're not high in it, but you're trending high, we need to do this. So I prefer to do it myself.
I don't blame him. Like we just said, that sometimes the doctor's not knocking that industry, but sometimes their criteria by the U.S. Health and everybody else is much too low for general population and less so for athletes.
Yeah, exactly. So if I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it the right way. It's pretty clear and cut on that one.
That's the only way to do it, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. So. But I think that there's some groundbreaking stuff out there from a recovery standpoint and sleep standpoint and nutrition standpoint. Training, for me, I think, this is a general statement, but I still think the golf world's very behind in training, where there's still a lot of misinformation out there and things like that. So when you say, is there anything groundbreaking training-wise, I'm still stuck in the belief that a lot of not everybody, but a lot of the golf athletes still need to master the basics. They need to be able to do even the basic exercises in full range of motion, because strength is gained in the range of motion you train it in, and there's still a lot of faulty training out there with faulty movement patterns and bad technique and things like that. So it's not so much about what the newest style of training is, because there's 1,000 different methodologies out there, but it's just doing the basics the right way through a full range of motion with good form and good technique. That needs to be established first and foremost. And then secondly is, it's quite simple, where when I prescribe an exercise to an athlete, it's going to remedy something. It's going to correct something. So by doing the right exercises for a right reason, whether it's a different step-up variation or for hip stability or a different split squat variation, things like that, is an exercise that you do has to fix something that's wrong in the body. So they need to be able to do the right exercises for the right reasons, and then be able to do the right exercises in the correct range of motion and things like that.
Yeah, and that's where it gets individualized, right?
Correct. Because not everyone needs a deadlift, not everyone needs a squat, not everyone needs to do a chin-up, not everyone needs to do this, or this, but there has to be a specific reason for it, and then also there has to be a counter movement or antagonist movement to it. So for every rep of pressing, we're going to do a rep of rowing. For every rep of pressing, we're going to do an external rotation movement or a scapular retraction movement. For posture, because the golfer's always hunched over.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to do a lot of lower back work.
Rhomboid work?
Yep, scapular retractors,
Yep.
Trap 3, rhomboid, the different innervation patterns.
Then that's to keep the structural balance of the body to help avoid injury as much as possible?
To help avoid injury and also to increase performance, correct. When you achieve the specific ratios with respect to different musculatures in the body,
mm-hmm.
you're going to generate more power, you're going to swing the ball, the club faster, you're going to produce more speed and power and things like that. Your performance will go up when you achieve specific norms and strength ratios with respect to each other. Quite simple.
Yeah, it makes sense. I mean, like you said,
yeah, like you're going to hit the ball further when you hit it square, right?
Right. It's novel concept.
Yeah, unbelievable. There's your earth-shattering strength training tidbit.
I wanted to get into something that you accomplished at a, comparatively speaking, to the rest of the people who had done it around the world. But you're a Poliquin level 5. You hold level 5. You're an international master coach, course conductor. But from the people I know and the research I did, you accomplished at level 5 very, very early comparatively. And we talked about how kind of Charles' article inspired you when you were 14, but can you speak to how your desire and your interest and everything pushed you so hard and really kind of spurred you on?
Yeah, I was really fortunate enough where, when I was 14, I was at the library and I had read his, some of his articles, and it just kind of connected and really just felt like it was the right thing for me, at that age to start studying. It just made sense to me. And from that moment on, he was pretty much, my full mentor, where I started taking his courses. I think I was, I may have been 17 years old when I first took one of his seminars and courses, and then from there I just kind of grew and evolved and just kind of soaked up every piece of information that I could get, from him, and collected every article and every book and everything that he pretty much published. I was fortunate enough to have a copy of, and that's kind of how it all began, for me at that age. And then I'm not sure if I was the whatever number I was, but yeah, I became level 5. I forget what age I was. I may have been 20, 22 years old or something like that. So,
mm-hmm.
But yeah, that's kind of the story behind that.
How did you go about? Because the internet was, it was around, of course, but gathering all of his articles and other things. Like today, you can just Google it and you can pull up anything you want on him or anybody else. How was it? Did you have to go a little bit in search of it? And I think, or in my opinion, it would kind of point to your desire and your passion for what you do.
Yeah. Back then, you actually had to go to the library and use the old Dewey Decimal System and pull the cards out and then search, and then you had to get the magazine or the research journal, and then I would make photocopies of it. This is obviously way before the internet, and actually this is a bit of it's going to sound a bit bizarre, but I actually called the university he went to, and I actually obtained a copy of his master's thesis from the University of Ottawa. That's how obsessed I was in the sense of trying to gain knowledge of his and study him and things like that. But he used to do some chat rooms back when the internet first started, and I would stay up at whatever time difference it was, may have been 11, midnight, 1 in the morning, or what have you, and just write down every note and every question and every answer, from those chat rooms. So, as you could kind of had like a free seminar, which was pretty cool. But then, I started collecting everything off of the internet and so forth. But yeah, just finding research articles and journals and writings that he used to do. And then I would make photocopies of that, and then started my own library of his work.
I can remember the first time I heard of him. I was watching one of the educational tapes. This will date me a little bit. The VHS tapes from a Czech program design course.
Yeah, I actually have that. Yeah.
and he this was back when Paul still had hair. That's how long ago that one was. But I remember he was talking about it. He goes, "Look, Charles is really the guy that's expert on this, and I've learned from him, and you guys really should look at his information and so forth." And I'm like, "Okay, who's this Charles he's talking about?" So of course I get on the computer and start searching, and I'm just there were two people in the training world that I saw their information and my eyes just popped out of my head. Paul was one and Charles was the other, and it's just like, holy shit, this is unbelievable.
Two pretty good people to study under,
Yeah, I had heard rumored that they had somewhat of a falling out. And I could see it where you get two highly driven alpha type males, and I was sad to hear it, but I could see how that would happen.
Yeah. There's a lot of egos in this business, So I've tried to learn from all that and just stay humble and focused to the goal, and just try and stay focused on making my athletes better, and not try and become famous and a celebrity in this industry by self-promotion and things like that. So that's kind of my takeaway from a lot of the business falling out and things like that between some of the professionals. Yeah,
you got to kind of stay neutral when the guys at the top are kind of getting at each other a little bit, or who knows? Maybe they spend enough time together. It's like in marriage; they just get tired of each other and got to go their separate ways. But it's unfortunate for the rest of us.
Yeah.
As I was just doing a little homework on you over the couple of weeks, I think I told you in one email when we started talking about you coming on the show, is I had found you on a search for Poliquin trainers, and obviously being in the Hilton Head Bluffton area, and you were at Clemson at the time, and that's when I was holy shit, is he educated? But one thing I noticed, you also have a Czech certification. That was pretty impressive as well.
Yeah, back in 1995, I believe, when a lot of this information started to come out, back then it was hard to go out and seek the best, because of the information age was just starting. So you actually had to go in person and learn face to face from people. And I think that's one of the most significant parts of my journey in this. Is I still do that today. So instead of looking things up on YouTube and trying to learn on the internet, I think it's really, really beneficial, and it's much more efficient to go out, seek the best, and learn from them face to face. So back then, I wanted to kind of diversify my portfolio, say, where I was studying under Charles, and I asked him, I said, hey, who would be who would be good to go see and go learn? And he gave me 2 or 3 different names, and Paul was one of them. And I said, okay, so here we go, and I want to go learn all that stuff, and then take away what I think is beneficial, that I can apply into my real world setting.
When you went through the courses and so, you didn't run across Dan Hellman, did you?
No, not familiar.
I know Dan was a faculty member for I think 13 years. I had him on the show a couple of weeks ago. He's down in Fort Lauderdale. He's helping me out with some issues I have from my playing days with backs, and he's very big into Eldoa. I think he's one of 7 certified guys in the world to do Eldoa for Guy Voyer.
Yep, really cool. When I was doing a private internship with Charles in 2001, he introduced Dr. Voyer to me for the Eldoa stuff. back 18 years ago. So
yeah, it was kind of eye-opening to me. Dr. Voyer worked on me, I think, the first time this past January, and we were
okay,
talking,
well,
and I think he said he had a place up in Montreal or somewhere up in the northeast of Canada, and I might get my
yeah.
cities. I don't know Canadian geography as well, but he said he had known and worked at Poliquin. I was like, oh, no kidding, that's pretty cool. So we talked about him for a little bit, and yeah, Guy is an amazing guy. He's another
brilliant.
one on that Mount Rushmore, so to speak, of people in the training industry that are just, you just look at me like, Jesus, these guys are smart.
Yeah, when they have to rewrite the Grey's Anatomy book because of you have some sort of impact, and that's for sure. But yeah, brilliant. But that just shows you how far ahead Charles was back then. Because he was always years and years and years ahead of everybody else, and of learning from these types of people and going out and finding them and then bringing it to the forefront. So
did you get
cool
to work
stuff.
on? Did you mentor under Charles for a while, or did you get to go work with him?
I
Often?
did. Yeah. So what's was really cool was, so I started doing his courses when I was 17 and seminars and all that good stuff. And then when I got the job at the University of Arizona in Tucson, his training center was an hour and a half away up in Tempe. So I would go up there and just torture the guy every single opportunity that I could. And then he actually hired me where I would go work for him on the weekends when I could and train some of the NHL guys and some of his professional athletes and things like that. So it was cool. I would get out of work at the U of A and then hop in my car and then drive, the 90 miles or whatever and go right to his training center and then work for him on the weekends when I could and, do internships and things like that with him during that period. So, yeah, really, really fortunate to be that close and have that opportunity to go and observe and learn and work and so forth,
Even as high a level as he was, he had to be pretty impressed with your level of dedication and desire and pushing yourself to start with him at that age and then work a full week and then drive up there on the weekends to work even more.
Yeah, for sure. I think he respected that, and I think what's a good story. What really blew him away was when I first showed up for my first private internship with him. I think it may have been 1999 or somewhere around there. I had a massive duffel bag full of binders of all of his writings and teachings and seminar notes and articles. I mean, I'm talking like a massive book bag, duffel bag, full of his stuff, because I would, take that with me and all my notebooks and so forth. And he said, "Hey, what's in the bag?" And I was a little bit embarrassed. I said, just my stuff, my clothes and so forth. He said, No, what's in the bag? So he made me open it up, and his eyebrow just went way up above his head, and he was smiling, and he knew it was all of his teachings and writings. And he asked me, he says, "Do I need to be concerned that you want to sleep with my wife?" So he's a little worried I was a little bit of a stalker, but yeah, he appreciated that and respected that, and just the work ethic and drive and passion and commitment to learning from him.
There are two people that, like you said, it's best to go learn directly from the person. And there were two people that I have regrets that I didn't reach out to them sooner. One of them was Harvey Pennick.
Yep.
I think I just got out of school. I was just finishing up college, and that his book came out, and I was really into teaching, and I wanted to go just write to him and say, "Look, I'd just like to come out and watch you teach for either a lesson or a weekend or whatever it is. I'll come from where I am to where you are." And never, just delayed. You never think about it. Next thing you know, they're no longer here. And Charles was the other one that, and with him it was, a lot of his articles, because he dealt so much with hockey players, like you said, and football players, Olympic athletes, and world champions. I wasn't finding a whole lot or hardly anything on golf training, and I wanted to reach out to him to say, "Look, I know you have to have some ideas and theories and so forth on golf training. I just can't find it."
Yeah, that's what really people don't understand about him is, a lot of his writings on the internet and books are arms and bodybuilding and stuff like that. But the people that have seen him work with athletes, one-on-one, and just being able to sit there and observe whether it's a golf guy or a NHL guy or a luge guy or whatever, just the takeaways you can learn by just sitting there and observing, in person was just amazing. Completely changed my world. Completely changed my world. So it was one of the unique things about being able to learn from him is not just reading his stuff, but being there in person and watching him train his athletes was just absolutely incredible of how far ahead he was, in his time back then.
One of the things I want to get into with you is most trainers, they'll say you need to eat healthy, you need to eat right, but most don't get into as much detail. They kind of leave that to the dietitians or nutrition experts that they work with. But under those programs that you learned under, nutrition, diet, and supplements was a big part, wasn't it?
Absolutely. Game changer. That's what I think really, sets you apart as a coach is having that knowledge and desire to control that and learn that aspect of performance, because just from the lab testing and the food panels and tolerances and things like that, back then no one had ever heard of a IgG1, food intolerance test, or, when you're rushed to make extreme levels of progress, because these athletes don't have a lot of time in their off season, no matter what sport you play. And when you have to be really efficient to produce results, like if you're not on top of that aspect, then you're just another coach. You're just another trainer. You know what I mean? Like if you really want to achieve results, you have to have that knowledge and dedication to applying that to your athletes or your clients, because that's where the results are pretty much, established. It's from nutrition and supplementation and taking the guesswork out of who needs what and who needs to eat what and all that good stuff.
Is that part of what you think makes his programs and his certification levels so good and so effective? Was it was all encompassing and not just maybe focused on one thing? It was diversified and touched on everything,
Yeah.
the entire athlete?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely, by far, because, there's so many paradigms that go into an athlete. It's not just sets and reps. It's not just training. It's not just, flexibility and stretching. It's all encompassing, like you said, but he was so far ahead of his time, just knowledge-wise, with that aspect of recovery and supplements and all that type of stuff. And you can't just learn that by reading a book. You had to go take the course and learn and then have dialogue, and it's because the science behind all that's always evolving. It's always changing. And he, I don't know how he did it, but he was way ahead of the research and literature before it even came out. And if you can equip yourself with those types of tools as a coach or as a client, then you're way ahead of the game. But that's what set him apart by far, was his knowledge of training and methodology and all the sets and reps and loading parameters was just, earth-shattering. But when you can be great at nutrition and supplements and diet and sleep and hormones and fascia and manual therapy and then also be a strength coach, like that's very, very unique, and that's an unbelievable skill set to obtain, and he had all that. And by him teaching all that to his students and stuff, that's I'm biased because he's my mentor, but I think having done this 24 years and seeing different ways to do this and different coaches and certifications and things like that, but by far his stuff was the best of the best and elite. There's no doubt about it.
Do you think, I'm just finishing up a book, Deep Nutrition, Dr. Catherine, I think her name's Shanahan.
Okay.
I think she's in LA. She's the team doctor or nutritionist for the Lakers, LA Lakers.
Yep.
Spent a lot of time in her, I think she was a licensed doctor, and she spent a lot of time in her nutrition study in Hawaii with the natives in Hawaii and big into bone broths and obviously organ meats and so forth. Do you, on the nutrition side, and then as you add in supplements, is it that you think that the farming practices, that the soil is just depleted of the minerals and nutrients and so forth, and that we, as a society, we can't get those things today? Or this is for your general person, and then as you're working with athletes, are they just burning so much of that they need the supplementation to maintain what they're doing and to continue the growth?
Yeah, I mean, obviously the number of elements it takes to make a plant does not exist in our soil anymore. That the literature is very, very clear on that. You know, the amount of vitamin C in an orange is not the same of what our grandfathers ate, and just the way the global economy is so interconnected. You know, the time it takes for food to get here and so forth. And there's a lot that goes into it, which we don't have to get that deep into it. But the people, when they eat, they don't eat correctly, first of all. There's one thing is there's not enough variety in people's diet, where the average person eats 11 or 13 foods, whatever. If you've got a room full of people and you say, okay, write down what you ate in the last 3 days, if you average it out, it's going to be somewhere around 11 different types of food. And there's over 150 foods in the world, so there's not enough variety first and foremost. But so people are not getting the array of nutrients and vitamins and minerals that they need, in their diet. But beyond that, yeah, there's no doubt about it, where it's very, very clear the amount of minerals and nutrients in food is completely depleted from what it used to be. So your average person needs to take a multivitamin or things like that. You can find out from your lab work of what you need and so forth. But for the athlete, in my experience, when my athletes come to me at age 18 or 19, they are already broken down before they even get to me. And that didn't used to exist 10, 15 years ago, because the way sports has changed in our society is these athletes play their sport year-round. They specialize at such a young age, and that's what they do. They play golf or basketball or whatever from age 4, and they play it year-round. So they're broken from a physical standpoint before they even get to me at that age, in today's sport. So from a nutrient standpoint, it's even more important that these athletes today are eating the right types of foods. But beyond that, that's why supplements is so important, because people don't eat the way that they used to eat anymore. And so physically they're already broken down, but from a health and wellness standpoint, from a nutrient profile, they are so depleted already, because everything's been taken out of them every single day. There's a demand now with all of these student athletes' time or young athletes, where to be successful, there's such a demand of their time from a practice standpoint, from a competitive standpoint. It's just over and over and over, repetition, over and over and over all day with their sport. So they need to be very, very efficient with their recovery model. And I think if you can take the guesswork out of your nutrition and eating the way you're supposed to eat for your profile, according to your genes, and then take the right supplements, if they're trending low in something or trending high, then they don't need this. So if you can take the guesswork out of it, then they'll be much, much more productive and obviously from a performance standpoint, be way, way ahead.
What are the things that you see athletes and people in general deficient in most?
Magnesium, for sure. That would be the number one thing. I see it in every lab panel that I run on every athlete, from a tissue repair and stress, depletes the magnesium pool in the body. So that would be the first thing. And then secondly, I see a lot of athletes that are depleted in zinc, which we know that in order to produce testosterone, you have to have zinc, and there's a lot of connectivity between all these things. But it would be magnesium, zinc, and then third, and I'll tell you a good story behind this, would be vitamin D. those are the top three nutrients that I see that athletes are deficient in, and that's not good because every metabolic process is, you need magnesium and you need zinc for hormones and tissue repair, and then obviously, vitamin D is the godfather, where you need it for everything, bone density and all that good stuff. But when I first started running lab panels on my athletes, I'll tell you, in 2012, okay, in the state of Florida, it's a sunshine state, so it's, the sun's out every day.
Yeah, so people assume they're getting enough vitamin D.
Yeah, you'd think so. But, when you wear sunscreen and you have a hat or you have sunglasses on, your body's not going to produce vitamin D. But anyway, so I had 13 athletes, and the scale for vitamin D is 30 to 100, okay, on the panel that I run. 30 to 100 is the scale. So on 13 athletes in the state of Florida, guess what their average vitamin D levels were out of those 13 guys?
Probably under 20.
Correct. It was 18. They were not even on the scale. 18. I said, oh my gosh, how do these guys not have stress fractures? How can they even perform? How can they even run?
Mm-hmm.
How can they even, touch a weight? This is really, really scary. And so anyways, we took countermeasures, and 6 months later, the average was, I think, 58. So still wasn't as optimum as where I wanted, but we were moving in the right direction. But that was really eye-opening for me, where when I run lab panels on athletes, I look for trends of who's trending high in this or who's trending low in this at different times of the year when there's different demands from a physical exertion and things like that on them. But yeah, just to put things in perspective, they were not even on the scale of vitamin D in the state of Florida. So that just tells you, number one, people don't eat the right way consistently, and then number two, the level of nutrients in our foods is not what it used to be 50 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And then number three, the importance of taking countermeasures on these nutrients and taking the guesswork out of it, of how important and how impactful that can be from a performance standpoint.
On the magnesium deficiency, once athletes were caught up, did you see a change in the learning curve and that it was shortened, and that the development of neural patterning and synaptic growth was improved?
The one thing that I noticed from a performance standpoint, once we got our magnesium levels back up to par, is that the most important, significant thing was their sleep was better.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and then obviously if you sleep better, then your recovery rate goes up from a muscular and neural standpoint. So we could be more aggressive with different types of training from a neural standpoint, because from an overtraining issue, it's not always from high volume and high reps and so forth and lactic acid. A lot of the overtraining or under recovery comes from the demands on the central nervous system. So my athletes' drop-off index wasn't nearly as high, and we could do a bit more advanced types of training methodologies once we got their levels back up, because they were recovering neurally at a much, much more efficient rate, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and when Dan was on, he and I were talking about magnesium. I told, there's a real funny, quick story. When I read one of Charles' articles, I mean, he you know better than anybody, he wrote a lot about magnesium and zinc,
Yep.
vitamin D, but in particular on magnesium. And I found that, and I'm like, wow, let me try that. So of course, I think I was taking, to start, I said, I don't want to overdo it. Let me take 200 to 250 milligrams a day. And I was feeling better. I said, okay, he says go to 500, but I'm not, at that time I was coming off of playing professional golf, and I'm like, okay, I'm not training as hard. I'm not working out as hard. I'm not doing it, but I'll go to 500 just for the hell of it. And I mean, I'd wake up sometimes and not know where I was. I was such deep sleep.
Yeah. Well, it's very specific, the type of chelate that you take, because there's the
absorption level.
Yeah, whether it's elemental magnesium or not, but also the different types of chelates of magnesium perform different functions. So like for someone who is not sleeping very well, they would need magnesium threonate, THREO. That's a specific type of chelate for that will help someone sleep. Where like magnesium taurate, TAURATE, that is pretty clear through research that it's going to help calm the nervous system down, and it's also important for like cell membrane repair and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Where like magnesium glycinate is good for muscle relaxation and contractility and things like that, bone mineralization, and prevents muscle cramping. So it's good for the liver and muscle tissue. So it's good to have different types of magnesium from an elemental standpoint, but also understand the chelate of what it does in the body. But
well, the mistake I made, like any athlete, is okay, if this is a little more is good, maybe a lot more is better, and I think I bumped it up to 700 or 750, and it wasn't a day or two later, and we're playing golf somewhere, and we got to about the 12th hole, and I said, hey, guys, I got to turn around. I got to go back to the locker room.
Yeah, no doubt. I like to do 1 gram spread out over meals after 4 p.m. because it's a yin and nutrient. It's a calming nutrient, so it should be taken in the afternoon or in the evening. So I'll go up to that high of dosages depending on what chelate. But for magnesium threonate, the best is to do 3 grams right before you go to bed, and you won't remember your head hitting a pillow.
Wow.
But I don't have a problem with high levels of magnesium because it's very important to remember that stress depletes nutrients, and our genes aren't designed for this amount of stress. And when I say stress, it's not just being in rush hour traffic or breaking down your tissues from training, but it's constant Wi-Fi stress. It's constant your phone beeping of text and emails, and just the culmination of different types of stress in our society. The fear of missing out on social media and constantly checking your phone, like that's a different type of stress. And we have 100 times more stress than our grandfathers did. It's just a different world that we live in. So with stress depleting nutrients in the body, and our genes haven't evolved and aren't designed for this amount of stress yet, it's really important to again replenish the proper nutrients that you need to fight all this stuff off.
Have you found any differentiation between taking the magnesium as a magnesium salt or magnesium flake bath versus taking it orally?
Yeah, if like Epsom salt baths are great for recovery for magnesium because obviously it gets absorbed through the skin and not the GI tract, so you don't have you can get high dosages without it having issues in the stomach and GI tract. I prefer to take magnesium orally, just from an absorption standpoint, in order to get your levels back up. But from a muscular standpoint, the Epsom salt baths are phenomenal for recovery, for tissue repair, for the muscles. But to how do I explain this? To fight everything from insulin resistance to excessive amounts of caffeine and sugar and anxiety and stress and even the fluoride in toothpaste will lower your magnesium levels. In order to replenish the proper chelates of magnesium, I prefer it to be orally. But if you need to recover and get the muscles repaired from a soreness standpoint, then that's where magnesium salt baths come into play.
Yeah, well, one thing I found out recently was the common general population thought is, well, you use like a cup or two for a whole bathtub full. But I recently was told, I'm asking your opinion, of course, as the expert, that you need, if you're going to do it in a bath, you need almost, let's say, a quarter of a gallon worth of Epsom
dump the
salt.
whole bag in.
Yeah.
just be excessive and extreme with it. Just dump the whole bag in.
Have you done float tanks?
Yeah, oh, yes.
Those are awesome, aren't
they?
Big
fan of that. Yes, that will change your world.
What's there, 1,000 pounds of Epsom salt in that thing?
Yeah, that will change your world. That and sleep pods and all that type of stuff now. It's amazing what's out there for these for these athletes. If they would just listen, these athletes have it made, because there's so much out there now for whether it's red light therapy and float tanks and sleep pods and all the information now on how to recover. It's amazing of what's in front of these guys.
Yeah, one of these days, hopefully the podcast will grow enough I could be like Joe Rogan and just have a float tank right outside the recording.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it'll happen.
How are you able to set the meal plans for your athletes? Are you able to get them the grass-fed and the free-range and the certified organic, or are you somewhat limited there, or at least get them quality meats and vegetables and things like that?
Yeah, it depends. When we travel, it depends on who we're playing and what city we're staying in, and because obviously from the hotels and things like that. So as much as we can control with that, we obviously do. Mm-hmm. It just depends on what athlete it is and so forth. One of the things we're fortunate here at Florida is we have X amount of dollars in our budget to bring food in now. So after workouts, training sessions, after practice, we can control what our athletes are eating by bringing food in from different local restaurants and caterers and things like that. But whenever we have team meals and so forth, it's always high quality food and organic and free range and grass fed and all that stuff.
It's a wonder some of these kids ever want to leave.
I know. I say, hey, when you guys leave here, get your checkbook ready, because you guys don't understand. You get these student athletes, you get free personal training, and you get these unbelievable meals and high quality foods and all these free lab testing and so forth. And they always call once they're in the real world and say, wow, I didn't realize how expensive it was to buy groceries and so forth. So it's always a conversation to be had of, hey, while you're here, take advantage of this, because it's obviously going to help your career, but also you're going to appreciate it one day.
Yeah, especially when they got to write the check for it themselves, like you said.
Yeah, absolutely.
You had mentioned blood panels before. How often do you do that for the athletes, and then for the average golfer out there listening, or the average couch potato, how often should they be doing something like that?
What I like to do is I'll run the food sensitivity panel just annually, just once a year, because there's different factors to that, where some of an individual's food intolerance is genetic, okay? Mm-hmm. Some of it is from the frequency of eating foods. Again, the more frequently you eat the same thing, the higher the chance that you're going to develop an intolerance to it. So as we explained, people do not have enough variety in their diet because they only eat between 11 or 17 different types of foods. So we'll run that once a year, and then after a couple of years on that, you can obviously determine what foods you're genetically predisposed to. Like oysters and zucchini have shown up on my food panels like the last 19 years, and I don't eat that. So I said, hey, I want to see what happens when I eat zucchini, and I ate like 3 stalks of zucchini, and I seriously slept like 14 hours. I could not wake up.
I've done that with eggs. I ate when I started really getting into training a number of years ago, golf specific, of course, but heavier lifting. I bet I ate eggs 5 days a week for breakfast. Now, about 2 or 3 years ago, it started where I would get excruciating stomach pain, and we boiled it down to I can't eat. I can eat eggs maybe twice a month at the most. If I eat them more than that, I'm laid out. I can't get anywhere more than 15 feet from a restroom. It's awful.
Yeah, exactly. So some of it's genetics, and some of it's the frequency that you eat certain foods. So we'll run that just annually, just once a year on our athletes. And then what I like to do from a comprehensive metabolic profile, I'll run that panel twice a year. So I'll run it in July, which is kind of our baseline. Where in July, from a student athlete standpoint, they're not in competitive season, they're not traveling, things like that. It's pretty much just practice and training. So stress levels and demands on the body are high, but it's not, where they're broken down in a 26-week season or things like that. So we'll run that in July, and then I will run it again in January, because that way it gives us enough time to take countermeasures to balance out what they're trending high or trending low in. So those are two times of the year that we'll run our comprehensive metabolic profile, and that tests for every single thing in the body pretty much. Glucose, all the electrolytes, ferritin, vitamin D, a lipid profile, homocysteine, thyroid profile, cortisol, testosterone, estrone, you name it, zinc, RBC mag, immune system, every single thing. And so it's a ton of information that we can get, and then it's a big puzzle. It says, okay, let's start this protocol, or this guy needs this, or his adrenals are fatiguing, or his glucose is high, or his, he's leaking electrolytes out from practice, or he's deficient in iron, whatever it may be. It gives us enough time to start taking countermeasures. So I had one basketball player. He's with the Dallas Mavericks now in the NBA, and he would literally be getting ready for practice, and we'd be in the team meeting, and he would fall asleep every day, like fall asleep. I'm like, it's 3:30 in the afternoon. I'm like, how are you tired? And he would like be yawning in games during timeouts. Like, this guy's constantly tired, and I'm like, this guy's sleeping 10 hours a night. Like, how can he be this tired? And anyways, long story short, when I ran his panel, he had like 0 ferritin in his serum. Like, he had no iron. And so that's why he was always lethargic. So we got his norms back up, and once we corrected that, he would like literally come running into the building and joking and singing and dancing, and hey, he was very interactive, and he would look you in the eye and talk, and just really changed him from a personality standpoint.
Was it just that he burned it so fast, or he was just completely deficient?
He was just completely deficient. Like, it was zapped, like taken out of his, like he didn't have any. And so by being able to, take countermeasures and things like that, whether it's, a golf guy for, his electrolytes, that way, he's outside in the heat, when they're depleted in, sodium, potassium, and chloride and so forth, by checking their electrolytes and then taking countermeasures for that, you can see a change in their performance, especially, when they're outside in the heat all day and carrying their bag 36 holes and all that good stuff.
Yeah, I've been playing around with going back and forth between electrolytes and then aminos.
Yep.
Just kind of rotating them just to see the effect. I haven't run blood panels at all, but maybe I'll get some done, send them to you to take a look at. But,
yeah, absolutely. You should.
Pretty interesting to see the difference.
Yeah, especially with being able to stay mentally locked in, and when you're out there for 4 hours on the course, and being able to have that your brain stay focused at a high level and not drop off and experience lethargy and brain fog and things like that. A lot of that's correlated to your electrolyte levels.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like your electrolytes spill out because you're sweating and then you're just going to cramp up. Like, there's so many more factors that go into staying hydrated. Again, with your power output and being able to produce your optimal club head speed, and for the brain to stay focused and on your task of what you're doing, all of that's correlated to staying hydrated.
I've played around with, I have a homemade recipe that I'll take a couple pinches of Himalayan sea salt or Celtic salt, put it in 16 to 32 ounces. Then I'll squeeze a couple of limes or lemons and put those in there. And then if I'm really goofing around, I'll get some potassium and just crush it up and put it in there and just see how that works. And then if I want the easy stuff where I just scoop, I've used Ultima quite a bit.
Okay.
Ultima Replenisher. And then I've been playing around with one that's like got double the amount of vitamins and everything in it that Ultima is Genius. I don't know if you've heard of them, or you guys probably got one that you use. I don't want to get you in trouble with saying anything, but if you want to say it, go ahead. I mean, hell, it's my podcast. We'll get your stuff out there as well. You do whatever you want.
Yeah. No, there's some really good products out there. I think what's important to look at when you're talking about electrolyte products is a lot of them, the number one ingredient is sodium. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
And you tell me one American that's deficient in sodium.
Right.
There's not one. Right? So
salt and everything.
I'm very picky where you should have higher levels of potassium and magnesium, and then lower levels of sodium. So there's a product I love called Cinerplex. There's a Dr. Mark Schaus. It's his electrolyte product. It's one of the few electrolyte products that actually has the correct ratio of electrolytes in it. And then there's another one which I'm a huge fan of. It's actually called, it's a genius name. It's actually called Hydrate. But it's from a company called Nutrient in Minnesota, but it's called Hydrate, and it's got the correct amount, the correct ratios of electrolytes, but it also has some taurine in it, and then folate and some B vitamins and things like that. So those are my two favorite electrolyte products.
Yeah, I'll try those
currently.
out. I'm always doing videos on different supplements and stuff for people on the YouTube channel.
Yeah, check those two out, and then obviously you can add some aminos and BCAAs and things like that.
Yeah, the Keon stuff has been really good. I don't know if you've heard of them or tried Ben Greenfield stuff.
Yep.
I found that to be very, very good.
Yep, absolutely. Absolutely. But again, the most important thing is you need higher levels of potassium and magnesium, not sodium. That's the cheap, lazy way out, in my opinion.
What issues in the golf teams you worked with? You worked with Clemson when they were a superpower in the college golf scene, and you've worked with different golf programs around UNC Charlotte, and I'm sure you have people come see you. But what issues do you find wrong with most of the golfers? Is it a flexibility, mobility? Is it a strength and power issue or control issue? I know we talked about hand strength and lat strength for more distance and control.
Sure.
What are you seeing? From your side?
To be honest, there's two things. Number one is they are far too weak, like from head to toe, from a structural balance standpoint. Like they're far too weak. Like I think there's, like we talked about, there's still a bit taboo of, I'm going, and it's changed quite a bit, but if you train the correct way for golf, you can get stronger without getting bigger and losing your flexibility. It just has to be done the right way, which, again, it's not that complicated.
That's full range of motion helps with that?
Correct.
On the flexibility part?
Correct, because strength is gained in the range of motion it's trained in. So that's important to remember, where if you want to become mobile, it's not all just about stretching, because of the fascia and things like that we talked about a bit. But most golf athletes don't train correctly in the first place, but they do not do the correct exercises in the full range of motion. So that's a problem right there, because then you're going to create more imbalances, and their current imbalances are going to worsen. And then the second part of that is they're not going to get stronger in the correct range of motion.
Mm-hmm.
That's the first issue. They're far too weak. And I'm not saying they need to train to be a power lifter or Olympic lifter. I'm not saying that, but I'm saying in the specific exercises, whether it's the rotator cuff or the scapular retractors or postural muscles of the upper back, or the erectors, or the hamstrings, whatever it may be, they're not strong enough in those specific exercises. That's the first problem. And then secondly, most, it's a generalization, it's not always true, but most golfers do not have the correct body composition. Okay? Because body fat is way, way too high. And people don't understand, like, if you want to perform at a high level in the game of golf, the leaner you are, the less your heart and lungs have to work, first of all, so from a conditioning standpoint, but also the brain can't function at its optimal pace and level when we're talking about focus if body composition is not optimal.
Yeah, you're burning shit fuel, basically, aren't you?
Correct. Exactly. And you know more than anybody, as well as your listeners, if you want to be successful in the game of golf, it's not, it's more mental than physical.
Mm-hmm.
So it's, those two aspects are correlated and go hand in hand with each other. So I would like for golfers to train correctly, but also get stronger in the right way. And then secondly, there needs to be more of a emphasis on body composition for the game of golf.
Did you have a so-called normal team training protocol for the teams that you worked with? Or did you have more individualized, or would it change for a middle-aged person? Double?
Yeah, it's all individualized.
Okay.
Yeah, it's all individualized. In today's setting, when I first started off at Clemson in 1995, I will not tell you how we trained for golf back then, because it was not correct. But Lucas Glover and all those type of guys, I don't know if they'll remember or not, but we were not training correctly. It was more of a cardiovascular, quote unquote, type of workout, because the game hadn't changed enough. There hadn't been enough literature and research and buy-in for strength training back then for golf. But as this evolved into today's program design, everything is individualized.
Well, I don't know whatever you're doing. There had to be right. I mean, Lucas used to kill the ball. I know, and DJ Trahan grew up in Hilton Head, and
yeah,
I mean, by the time he
Jonathan
got to Clemson,
Bird,
they were murdering it. I mean, stupid length back then.
Yeah, that's because Coach Penley was a pretty good evaluator back then.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Jonathan Bird, I couldn't get him off the Scott curl bench. He loved doing elbow flexion. It was great, back then. So, but I've been fortunate. Even at UNC Charlotte, we were ranked number 1 in the country at one point, and just been really fortunate to be around really, really good players. Whether it was at Minnesota or Arizona or Stanford or what have you, or here at Florida.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, wherever you seem to go there, their sports programs seem to do really well. So I wonder if that has anything to do with it.
Well, I appreciate it, but yeah, I've just been really, really lucky.
All right, we were talking about supplements and a lot on electrolytes, and you had given some examples, and I've already gone to Amazon and put those in my basket, so I hope to have the Cineplex and the Hydrate here within 2 days.
Good.
Any other supplements that you're using, whether it's a magnesium supplement or the zinc or anything that the listeners can either go to Amazon or they go to your, if you have a website for it, they'll direct them to you or somewhere, any particular brands that you're finding are higher quality than say, some run-of-the-mills that they might get their local shop?
Sure. I was taught at a young age from my mentor that supplements are like parachutes. You do not want to buy cheap ones. So I'm very particular about what brands I use. And what I've found over the course of my career is that certain companies have certain supplements that are better than each other. So I love ATP Labs out of Canada. They have some very good post-workout supplements and intra-workout supplements. So they have a product.
Is that ATP?
ATP Labs. Yep. They're out of Canada.
So Adam, Tom, Peter. ATP.
Yes.
Okay.
Correct.
Just want to make sure.
Correct. Yep. They have some phenomenal post-workout stuff. They actually have one of the best, if not the best, carbohydrate powders for the guys that are lean and need calories. It's called Pentacarb. It's actually a blend of 5 different type of carbohydrates, because the literature is very clear as far as glycogen replacement and so forth, that it's much more efficient with a mixture of carbs instead of just one or two. And it actually has magnesium glycinate, which we talked about in it. So that's very, very good. And then they actually have a pretty cool product. It's called MyoPrime. And for the athlete or golfer that needs to increase their strength or power output, it's called MyoPrime. It's a specific form of magnesium creatine, and it's got vitamin D3 and some other stuff in it. So that is a good product to use pre or during training for power output and strength increases. So they're really, really good. And then I mentioned Nutrient. They're out of Minnesota. A guy named Greg Peterson. He's brilliant with different protocols and nutrient timing and things like that. They make that hydration product that we talked about. And they have some pretty cool, what I call functional drinks or medicinal shakes, as far as for like gut function and inflammation and detox. They have some pretty cool stuff. They have a new product called Detox, which I use for it's not a meal replacement, but in between meals. It supports both phase 1 and 2 detoxifications. It's got some pretty cool nutrients in it as far as modulators for the liver and detox, and glycine and taurine and acetyl-L-cysteine and different things. So I like that. And then they have another thing called Inflame Ease, which is great for reducing inflammation in the body, because most athletes have elevated homocysteine and inflammation just from training and practicing and competing and things like that. So they're phenomenal. And there's another company called Trilogy. They're out of Australia. They have, I think it's the best magnesium product on the market. It's called GabaMag. And they can look that up, but it's called Trilogy, Trilogy. They're out of Australia, but they have the magnesium product. If you just told me to name one, it would be theirs. And then I think for intra-workout, so you have your pre-workout supplements, which needs to be specific for your training goal. I can get into that in a minute. You have your intra-workout nutrients, and then obviously you have your post-supplements. Trilogy has the best amino product on the market that I've seen. It's called Ion Aminos, and it's phenomenal. And I would recommend any athlete, no matter what their training goal is, whether it's fat loss or functional hypertrophy or strength, from their first rep to the last rep, they need to sip on those aminos throughout their training, and that will set them way, way ahead with recovery. So,
do they come flavored? Because early on aminos, yes. God, it tastes like drinking battery acid.
Oh, it's awful, just miserable. We used to make our own, and I won't tell you some of the stories from that. But yes, they come flavored. They come flavored. So, yeah. So, yeah, and obviously I like Designs for Health. They have some really cool stuff out there. And then Thorne, Thorne. So those would be my top 5 companies. So
yeah, I use Thorne, the glutamine. It's
yep,
really good stuff.
Yep, exactly. So it depends on what the supplement is pretty much dictates what company I buy from. But again, I'm I want to know where the raw materials come from. I want to know exactly the ratio of nutrients that are in the product, and I do not want products that have a bunch of fillers and garbage in them. So that's why the rule of thumb is do not buy supplements from the store. Know where you're getting them from and the source and so forth. So,
you got any plans to start your own line of supplements, like your mentor, Charles?
Nah, maybe one day, but it's a full-time deal, and right now with my athletes in season and stuff like that. There's no way I could do it. No way. But maybe one day.
Maybe
so
one
much
day. Time in
you never know. Yeah, you never know. So, but yeah. So pre-workout, you either the rule is you either focus on your brain or you focus on NO2 production. So, depends on what your training goal is, and then that dictates what supplements you would take and so forth. And then intra-workout, the aminos from Trilogy, and then post-workout, what I like to do, depending on the athlete's body fat, whether he gets carbohydrates or not, I always rotate my types of protein. Because we talked about the food intolerances. It's very, very common, and it's very easy to develop an intolerance to post-workout protein. So, for example, one day I'll do whey. The next day I may do beef protein. Then day 3 I may do pea and rice protein. And then day 4 I will do goat protein. Mm-hmm. And then I'll rotate back to the whey. So I think it's really, really important to rotate the source of protein that you're ingesting as far as post-practice or post-training or post-workout.
You bring up goat protein. The Charles had that one of his posts, I think one of the last posts he did was the protein pancakes. And he had the Mount Capra goat protein with, I think he's got cinnamon and nutmeg and applesauce, and it's by far the best pancakes I ever had. And I had to break down and tell my mom that you got to taste these. And she's, oh, you mean better than mine? I'm like, yeah, wait until you taste them. And she's, oh my God, these are so good.
Yeah.
I'll link that in the show notes for everybody. You got to try it. If I can make them, anyone can make them, because I fumble over myself in the kitchen. Yeah.
The cool thing about goat protein is it's pretty much the most hypoallergenic protein out there. So the chance of developing an allergen is very, very, very low. And it's great for children, too, when if the mother's finished nursing or whatever before. This is outside the scope of golf, but it's very hypoallergenic, so people do not get upset stomach or any type of dairy intolerance and stuff like that. So
cool.
Big fan of it, yeah. Big fan of it.
Can you talk a little bit on the program you use, the BioSignature modulation program?
Sure. I'm going to try and put this into...
we can do a whole nother show on it, but just to introduce people to it, we'll give a little teaser, or you give a little teaser just for a few minutes, and we'll do another show sometime on that.
For sure. Okay, so the premise behind it, and in 1990, this is... people think it's is a new thing, but in 1999, I was with Charles, and of course, his favorite line to tell everyone is, "Hey, you're fat. You're too fat." So, anyways, he started doing my body fat, and he's pinching me in all these different areas, and I'm like, what's going on here? Like, what? You're on my cheek, you're on my chin, you're on my calf, you're on this and that, and so he started explaining this to me, and basically, how much fat you store in a certain area is an indication of your hormonal profile. Okay, so if you're 12% fat and I'm 12% fat, we have two different physiques. We're two different people, so we pretty much have a biosignature genetically of where we store our fat. So we could be the same exact body fat percentage, but you and I could look like two completely different people. You may store your fat in your lower body. I may have more in my upper body. You may have a higher ratio of fat from your pec to tricep. So anyways, if you store your fat in the trunk, it's basically an imbalance between your adrenals and insulin hormones. If the ratio between your pec skin fold and your tricep skin fold, that's pretty much an imbalance in the aromatization of your testosterone. Okay, so where you store your fat gives me a ton of information on what type of training you need to do and what type of supplements you need to take. It takes the guesswork out of it, pretty much, if that kind of makes sense.
Yeah, it's awesome. Yeah. I got to come down there and see it, definitely.
Yeah, pretty cool. It's the most... So the DEXA scan is obviously the gold standard of body fat. I actually did a unpublished study when I was at Stanford. I compared my skills to the DEXA scan, and I was under a 1% difference. So it's pretty. You can become pretty proficient in it, and it's extremely, extremely accurate. And the other cool thing is, when you use this, you can track it over time, so you can see where you're losing body fat. Does that make sense? So, like, the first two sites people drop is obviously in the chin and cheek for the most part. But if a guy's subscapularis, it's the skin fold in the upper back, that's pretty much the carbohydrate intolerant site. So if that measurement is above 10 millimeters, my athlete does not get carbs post-workout. If it's under 10, then they've earned their carbs. So again, it tells me where they're storing body fat, what sites aren't budging, what we may need to manipulate or shift from a supplement and protocol standpoint, and things like that. It's a very, very efficient way to get a client or general population person or an athlete in shape and get them lean. So it tells me their androgen sites or hormones, insulin sites. There's a thyroid site, so you can tell if someone's thyroid is a little bit sluggish without actually doing a lab test. There's a cortisol site, there's growth hormone sites, and then there's estrogen and inflammation sites. So pretty cool stuff.
Yeah, it is. It makes you wonder how bad, and most people walking around and athletes walking around that don't even know about it, how much of a shortfall they are from their potential.
Yeah, absolutely. And what's amazing is when some of my athletes go to different professional combines, they pretty much people do it's either the bod pod or the a 3-point caliper site, which is very, very inaccurate. So I've had many athletes who are around 8%, which with the metabolic analytics or BioSignature, whatever you want to call it, it's pretty lean for an athlete. When they go to get tested on the professional level, they call me and say, "Hey, I was the leanest guy here. I was 3.5%." Like 3.5%. Like, you should be able to see your pancreas and your spleen if you're that lean. And say, okay, well, I'm glad that you had the lowest body fat. You earned it. You deserve it. However, you're still 8%. So, but yeah, I'd rather have an accurate number and be able to track it, and then be able to take countermeasures to get a guy in shape and get a guy lean and be really, really efficient with what we're going to do. Because again, people don't have a lot of time. You got to get ready for your season. You got to, your off season's short, so it's a very, very fast-tracked, efficient, productive way to get a guy in shape.
For those that, let's say, live on the other side of the country from you that can't readily come down to make an appointment with you and do that, are there other? Is there somewhere that people, let's say, in Colorado or California or the Pacific Northwest can go? Is like the Poliquin group has their certification, and that's how I found you. Are there BioSignature program website or so forth that someone can?
Yeah, everything's kind. To be honest, to answer that question in fairness, everything's kind of unstable at the moment with Charles's passing and things like that. But you can. I don't know if his trainer directory is still up, but just I guess trying to find someone who has done Charles's courses and so forth just on the internet, and then reaching out to them and so forth, and just word of mouth. There's many good people out there who have done these courses and have this information and are very skilled and proficient in body composition, manipulation, and things like that. But I think right now, just it's still being under a year. There's a bit of instability and kind of a shifting of things going on right now.
I understand. You see that in a lot of things.
Yeah.
Well, if anyone out there listening, if you can find it, just shoot me a message. My contact info is all over the blog page and everywhere else, and I'll get it to Preston, and we'll find you somebody in your area. Get you.
Yep, I can refer. Most done this a long time and know a lot of really good coaches. So most times I can recommend someone in a certain area.
Okay, perfect. Let's get into a little bit about what's been the big talk in golf, probably for the last couple years, and that's speed and distance. It's such a focus in today's game, whether you turn on the Golf Channel or you listen to any of the social media sites or what have you. Now, I've debated with a lot of different fellow pros of mine, teaching pros and so forth, that they're always claiming, well, if you want to swing fast, you have to train just speed only. You have to swing as fast as you can. I'm like, well, then you just don't understand how the body works, right? And I say you have to lift heavy. You have to have dynamic ballistic training. You're the expert. You work with some of the top golfers in the country. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, different sports need different levels of different types of strength. Mm-hmm. Okay, so for example, eccentric strength is obviously the strength of lowering a weight within a respective range of motion, and there's a myth out there that only jumping and landing sports need eccentric strength, and that's not true. Because we know through literature that the best and most powerful athletes can produce the most amount of force while they're relaxed. That makes sense?
Yep.
So with that being said, if you really want to hit the ball far, you need a specific level of concentric strength or moving a weight in comparison to a specific level of eccentric or lowering a weight. Okay, that's what's called the strength deficit. Okay, so the strength deficit is the difference between eccentric and concentric strength. And different sports have different ratios of a strength deficit. Okay, so for example, a basketball player, the ideal strength deficit, or the difference of eccentric and concentric strength, is 20%. So they should be able to lower 20% more weight than they can either press or squat or move. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
A shot putter, someone who has to throw an object one time as far as they can throw it and then have a fit, they need a strength deficit of 1%. Okay? Where with golf, in my opinion, this is anecdotal, just through years and years of experience, a golfer needs anywhere from 15 to 20% difference, okay? So they need to have a fairly high level of eccentric strength. So a rep is not just a rep of whatever exercise they're doing. You can't just move a dumbbell or a barbell or a machine or a cable as fast as you can every single day at the same speed. You have to have a variation of speed of contraction. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and for me it does. I've read so much on it. But so for someone listening, let's say if you can bench press, we'll make it simple math, 100 pounds on the press.
Yes.
You should load it to 120 for the lowering.
For an 8, yes, and they need to lower that object 8 seconds. It doesn't have to look pretty. They should be shaking. They should be, really fighting it for survival. And that is a way to test. And obviously they would not do that every single day. I like to test my athletes, depending on who it is, anywhere from every 6 to 12 weeks in that. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So, for example, the chin-up is very, very specific to golf, as we talked about, of increasing lat strength and shoulder mobility if you want to increase your club head speed. So if I have a golf athlete who can do one chin-up with 100 pounds around their waist, which would be quite strong, which I've actually had guys do, they should be able to they should jump up with 120 pounds around their waist and lower themselves under an 8-second period. Okay? And if they can't achieve that, then they need to spend a greater percentage of their training increasing their eccentric strength by training at slower speeds. Okay, so if I have a golf athlete and I have 12 weeks to get him ready for his competitive season, depending on, it's quite advanced stuff, but depending on his strength deficit, that's going to dictate the percentage of time I spend training to increase his eccentric strength. So to put this in English, you have to train at different speeds at different times of your training. Okay, so if I have 12 weeks, the first 4 weeks is pretty much going to be using dumbbells because the range of motion is greater by using that tool. Okay, and the speed of contraction may be pretty consistent where it's a controlled lowering of 3 seconds down, and I'm going to want them to move the dumbbell fast at explosive or a 1 second tempo on the way up. Okay, then weeks 5, 6, 7, and 8, we're going to train at a different speed. The time that he lowers whatever tool he's using is going to slow down, because in order to get that strength deficit to the optimal ratio, you have to do different time under tension with respect to a rep, because a rep is not equal to a rep. Does that make sense?
Yeah, the 4 parts of the rep: the concentric, the pause, the eccentric, and the pause at the bottom.
Correct.
Right.
Correct. And that's just the generalization. And again, it depends on who it is, what they need, what their goal is, what the training age is, and things like that. But the point is, they should be able to lower for 8 seconds 15 to 20% more weight than what they can do for a 1 rep max. That will shift or narrow the gap of the strength deficit in order to increase their power output. Because if you want to hit the ball far, you have to be able to produce the most power and most force when you're in a relaxed state. That's what the best athletes can do.
You had mentioned hand strength before. Would you do that training in a similar fashion?
No, because the range of motion is too short.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So, like if you're doing wrist flexion or extension or ulnar deviation, whatever, the range of motion is too short. When I'm doing grip training, I don't like to do reps below 8 because I want the time under tension to be higher in order to increase their grip strength isometrically.
Makes sense to me.
Does that make sense? Yeah. And plus, grip strength is going to go up because I have thick grip dumbbells, I have thick grip apparatuses for chin-ups, pull-ups, and things like that. So if you want to increase your maximal strength with the grip, that's better accomplished by using thick grip apparatuses and things like that. The more variation you can have in training, the greater results you're going to have. So I like to switch up and things like that.
Yeah, I remember I was reading Arthur Jones's stuff going way back. The hit training. Remember that stuff?
Yeah.
And I got into the section on all eccentric workouts. And I kind of knew some stuff, right? I had read a lot of stuff, but I was nowhere near educated the way I should have been. And when I did the eccentric training, I think I had 5 different exercises. I think there was leg press. I did 2 legs out and 1 leg back.
Sure.
Shoulder presses. I can't remember what the other ones were, but there was 5. It might have been 6. I felt like I got the flu 2 days later. My body was just so beat up.
Yeah, it's very hard to recover from.
It's
very,
awful.
very hard to recover from. The rule of thumb with eccentric training is you do not want to do it 2 sessions in a row. You alternate. So if workout A is quote-unquote eccentric based, workout B would be conventional 3 or 4 or 5 days later, and then when you go back to workout A, then it's every other session. It's just too hard to recover from.
It is, and I didn't know that at the time, but it took about 10 days to 2 weeks, but all of a sudden, after I got over that hurdle, the strength gains were ridiculous. They just shot through the roof.
Exactly. But it's important to remember you have to keep changing it up. You can't do, you need variation in training from that in order to keep making progress and to get that strength deficit to the optimal ratio.
Oh, yeah, I can attest to that. Do not do what I did.
Yep, that's true.
Now, you work with a lot of athletes, and so you're at Florida now, and you've worked at Clemson, like we said before, UNC Charlotte, and Arizona, and a number of others. So you have some of these athletes for most of the time, 4 years, 2 years, let's say, for the better talented ones. When they turn pro, do they stick with you as their strength coach, or do they believe that now they're at the pro level, they got to go find a so-called pro trainer?
Some do, some don't. What I've found is most of them the ones that don't circle back around and come back.
Mm-hmm. You let them come back?
If they worked hard while they were here, then yes. But yeah, absolutely. So the thing with that is, depending on where they go and what level and things like that, is going to dictate. I'm a big believer in variety of training. If I've had them for 2, 3, 4 years, I have no problem with them going and experiencing a different style and a different type of training, as long as it's productive and it makes sense, and it's not something that's entertainment based or just out there to be out there or
right.
whatever. It's got to have a rhyme and a reason. I think that's good for those guys, and then they come back to me a couple years later. Some guys, when they turn pro and they leave, they love the style of training and what we do, and then I continue to write their programs for them and things like that. So it's a mixed answer. But some guys, when they go overseas and they realize that they don't have access to the level of equipment and gym, and sometimes they're just training out of hotels and things like that, then there's an emergency response of, hey, I need a workout, what can I do? They start to panic a little bit. So some guys do, some guys don't, but what I've found is the majority of them circle back and come back because they can find out quickly the level of results that they get, where they may be attracted to the latest gimmicks and entertainment, and this is cool, and I want to try this, and then after a year they're injured or they're hurt or did not make progress. Okay, I need to go back to what got me to where I am today, and they circle back.
It's interesting that you say that if they don't work out for a while, that they get the little paranoid or anxiety ridden, because I had Dan Hellman was on the show. I don't know if you know Dan.
Sure.
He said that a lot of times what he has to prescribe is less exercise for the people that come to see him, especially the athletes, because they're so overworked, so overtaxed, and their hormonal and adrenal systems all out of whack. They're just a total catastrophe.
Exactly. It takes such a toll on the body from every type of system, emotionally, physically, and everything. Where plus the thing is too, once they get out of routine of the system we have here, they don't eat it's hard to eat as clean and consistently, and just the lifestyle changes so much. It takes a toll on the body,
Yep.
So, yep, absolutely.
With all the high level athletes that you've been around, what do you see separates the best of the best from, say, either those just below them or those falling short? Is it work ethic? Is it talent? What's your opinion?
Two things. One, I'm going to tell you that's strength training related.
Mm-hmm.
What I like to do with every athlete I have is I do the called the caber toss test. Okay, so I have a line on the court or field or wherever, and I have 3 different medicine balls. I have a 6-pound, an 8-pound, and a 10-pound ball. And what it is, it's a posterior chain synchronization test. So it identifies coordination and skill learning. So I don't tell them what to do. I just say, hey, I want you to pick the ball up and throw the ball overhead as far as you can throw it. That's all I tell them. So they'll go to the 6-pound ball and launch it overhead, then pick up the 8-pound ball and pick up the 10-pound ball. And I chart it on a curve, because the shape of the curve shows coordination. So it tells me who's going to score the best. They're going to make the most progress with strength training. And that goes back to what I said earlier, is the most powerful athletes are the ones that can relax while applying the most force. So obviously, what ball, 6-pound, 8-pound, or 10, should you be able to throw the furthest?
6.
Correct. And then the 8 and the 10. So if you were to make a graph, you should have a curve. And what I've found is the sport is cyclical, like speed skating or even swimming. They have the most dysfunctional curve. But it tells me who has the I guess you could say, neural makeup and coordination and skill learning, and that's related to their level of athleticism. So the guys that score the best on the Caber-Toss test have the highest chance of going to play at another level. It's not always true, but it's a norm, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because you can make an elastic guy powerful, but you can't make a powerful guy elastic. Okay, and in sports, you always want to pick the elastic guy because they're going to be the most quote-unquote athletic, whether that's golf or what have you. Okay, so, and then the second part of the question is the best athletes, the most successful guys, I won't name names, but they have played the longest and made the most money and have stuck around the longest in their sport. They have an intrinsic motivation about them, because a lot of athletes in the last 5, 10, whatever years, it's constant need of external motivation. I need to be motivated. I need music to get me going. I need you to bring energy to me. I need this, this, and this. And they just take and take and take instead of giving to others and making others around them better. The best athletes I've ever had have just been intrinsically or internally motivated, if that makes sense. Like, not everyone's perfect, and not every day of the year you're going to show up with a high level of energy, focus, and drive and ready to practice and compete and train and get better. But the majority of those times, the great ones do. They have just an internal drive about them. So those two things would be the first things that pop into my mind to answer that question correctly.
Okay, cool. How do you measure the success of your athletes? Is it do you measure where they started to how far they've gotten, or is it based off of them reaching a goal or winning at whatever event they're trying to win?
You know, everyone always asks that question, and I probably give the worst answer out of anybody. But it's the truth. It's the honest truth. For me, and I don't know why, but I've been very consistent about this throughout my career. It's not about the guy that gets drafted the highest or has the most wins on tour or makes the most money or is the most famous or has the most followers or whatever it may be, or who was the hardest worker for me or the most consistent or whatever. It's none of that. For me, the way I like to judge it is the level of impact I can have on their life from a longevity standpoint.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, it's very, very rewarding when, a guy had in 1998 still messages me today saying, hey, they're still telling stories. I remember this workout. I remember this, or, hey, I want to achieve this goal. Can you send me a program or what supplement? Or, hey, your sleep seminar you gave me 10 years ago, I'm still applying those things. Or, I had my kids are doing it now, or my wife, and just when they reach out and you can tell that you had an impact on some level from a health and wellness standpoint that they can take with them and apply in their lives today, that's really, really rewarding for me, because you don't realize till you've done this a long time, you as a coach, when you're around 17, 18, 19, 20-year-old kids or whatever, the level of influence and impact you can have on their life, whether you believe it or not, and you think you're saying the same thing over and over and over. Because at the end of the day, coaching is just about repeating yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's what a coach does. You just repeat yourself over and over and over and over and over. And even when you think the kid's not getting it or not listening, over time, that they will. And the level of impact and influence you can have on them as a coach is really, really, really profound. So that's why I'm very motivated each and every day when I come into work to be great and go above and beyond and try and excel at what you do and give to those guys, because it's going to impact them at some point in their life. And some guys take more and some guys take less, and you can't change everybody. But for me, it's really, really rewarding when, in the future, down the road, no matter how successful they were from a monetary standpoint or competitive standpoint, but just knowing you had a level of influence on making them healthier and better as a person. For me, that's kind of what I like to be judged on.
I'm not sure of NCAA rules, but are you allowed, like if I ask you who the most rewarding athlete you ever worked with was, are you allowed to say, or if you're not, then we'll just skip that question?
I can, but I don't have favorites, to be honest.
No problem.
Don't have favorites. I've had some guys that I just dread seeing every single day and just, I got to deal with you today. And I have guys who walk in and I light up. For me as a coach, I think that's where a lot of people go wrong, and you do a disservice to athletes. Is you can't have favorites, and you have to treat them the same, no matter who it is and how they make you feel. Like, you have to be consistent with the way you coach.
Mm-hmm.
Because what you do serves as proof of what you believe. And so for me, I've just tried to have a level of consistency no matter who walks into the gym.
Do you spend more time working with or mastering either yours or your team's individuals' strengths, or improving their weaknesses?
What's the difference? Because as a coach, I'm a big believer in you have to set your athletes up for success.
Mm-hmm.
So I always reward effort, not performance. Okay, so from day one, when we assess them and evaluate them, like, the majority of the time is spent correcting their deficiencies and what they're not good at, and getting their body aligned, and strength ratios and length, tension, flexibility ratios. Like, you're always fixing and correcting what they're not good at. But by doing that, you're also increasing their strengths. So they go hand in hand, and they're both very, very coordinated. They're both correlated.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't look at it from a difference from that standpoint. Because as you correct someone's deficiencies, you're making their strengths stronger anyways, because they're improving their performance,
Yeah,
correctly.
it makes total sense. Okay, I understand it that
Yeah.
way. Yep.
Yeah.
What surprises you most about your field, strength and conditioning?
What's the what now? I'm sorry?
What surprises you most about your field, or is there anything that really surprises you?
Yeah, the level of just moronic stuff that just appears every single day by people trying to make money. I shouldn't say surprises me, but I'm surprised at what just stupid inventions people can come up with that don't produce any results. That just shocks me every single day. I'm like, what? And then the level of idiots that buy this stuff, that surprises me every single day. I'm concerned as a society we're getting dumber by the day.
Is there anything you believe in that some of your contemporaries think is a bit crazy? Any theories you're developing, or philosophy ideas that you might have just through all the years that you've done it, that some of your contemporaries are, yeah, you're Preston, there's no way that's going to work?
Well, for one thing, the amount of supplements I like my athletes to take, because there's still some very simple ways of thinking out there, like we talked about with you can get everything from your diet and food and this and that, which is not true. But I would say one thing would be the importance of neck training. I spend a lot of time training the neck extensors and flexors of my athletes, where most people are like, why do you need to train the neck? Like, what does the neck have to do with anything? That would be the one thing that pops into my mind, because no matter what your sport is, if you can increase your neck strength, you're going to increase all strength from head to toe.
Mm-hmm.
So I like to spend a lot of time, whether it's in the beginning of a workout or in between or at the end, training the neck extensors. Plus, no matter what sport it is, there's a 50% reduction in concussions for every 1 inch of neck growth. I'm not saying I want every golf athlete to have an enormous neck like Bill Kazmaier, but the point is, even golf athletes, if you want to hit the ball further and you want to hit it more accurate, you need to have a strong neck. Just think of the position you're in when you swing the club. Like, you're stabilizing your head. You're looking down at the ball, right? If you look up when you're swinging, that's, you can explain, but it's not a good thing. So a lot of my colleagues think it's a bit overkill, but I know from experience and from results with power output and driving distance and things like that, the stronger your neck extensors are, the better your performance is going to be.
Yeah, and the neck, cervical spine, and the lumbar spine mimic each other. From all the people I've been around and have told me that if one's curved one way, it's going to curve opposite through your body cavity, and then the lumbar is going to mimic the cervical. If your neck's off, there's your low back issue right there.
Correct, and T-spine rotation, all that type of stuff. So if you strengthen your neck, all your other lifts are going to go up, and then there you go. It's very simple. But many of my quote-unquote colleagues and other people in the industry just don't have never heard of that, or they don't agree, or they don't want to do it, and whatever. It's better for me that they don't.
Yeah, keep doing what you're doing, keeping your athletes
exactly
healthy and strong.
Charles told me a long time ago that if you're doing something that other people aren't, but it's producing results, then I won't use the word, but then beat all and keep doing it.
Yeah, Charles had a way with words, get right to the point, didn't he?
Oh, did he ever?
If we had this conversation 5 years from now, and I hope we talk much more between now and then, what's different? What have you? How has your life changed?
I would say you want the honest answer? I would say the research and science that's out there with recovery with respect to peptides. I would say that, because that is an evolving, rapid realm of the industry, as long as cellular regeneration, what's called NAD. There's a doctor in California, his name's Matt Cook. He's one of the best. He's one of the godfathers of mitochondria, because we know if you can basically prevent the mitochondria from aging, you can live longer. So those two areas of science, I think, are evolving every single day, peptides and NAD. That's just a really fascinating subject. And then...
Does that get into telomeres?
Yeah, but way beyond that. Yeah. Whole new level. It's been hours talking about that, but it's fascinating. There's a whole world out there that's just... It's unbelievable for performance and recovery, and it's legal. That, and then I would say the science in 5 years from now that's out there for gene testing is going to change sports, where they're going to be able to test the amount, just different genes in a 3-year-old kid and say, you need to be a 100-meter sprinter, you need to be a triathlete, you need to swing a golf club, you need to be a basketball player, because the percentage of fast twitch fibers in your posterior chain, you're going to be able to jump 40 inches, whatever it may be. That's a very interesting yet scary subject, but I think in 5 years from now, there's going to be some serious breakthroughs in that.
Yeah, I think that goes back to David Epstein's book we talked about way back when we started about sports gene, and it sparked me to start to research. Is there anything that for golfers that you can test as a youngster that would say, yeah, this kid's really going to be a great golfer?
There is. I don't want to get into it, but I would have them do the caber toss test first. I'll give you the simple answer.
We'll say that for another episode.
Yeah. There's a whole new world, and it's fascinating, and it's really earth-shattering that's out there with that type of stuff. Pretty cool, though.
Cool.
Really interesting.
Let's, because we getting near the end of our time. I don't want to spend too much. You've been so gracious to give 3 segments. Let's do some quick rapid fire and then wrap up, if that's okay.
Sure.
Let's see. The best part of your day is blank. Is what? Fill in the
Dessert.
blank.
Ice cream. No. Training. Charles instilled in me that as a coach, never, ever stop training. If you do, then you need to stop coaching. I enjoy my 45 minutes to an hour every day to myself of training. That's my getaway, and no one can talk to me or disturb me, and that's my time that I can reflect and think of new ideas, and it's amazing when I'm training. I'm focused on myself, but I'm also reflecting and coming up with new ways to impact my athletes and things like that. So that's my favorite part of the day. And also sleep. I love sleeping. Not that I'm lazy, but I love the quality of sleep that I get. Yep. But no, I'd say training. That's my time, and I always reflect on that.
Pretty cool. If Florida was having a charity golf event and you were playing in it, and they said we'll get you paired with anybody you want to, who would be in your dream foursome?
Come on, man, Tiger, the generation. He's the most competitive.
All right, he's one. Who would be? There'd be you and Tiger. Who would be the other two?
I would say I'll get my boys back. I'd say Lucas Glover and Jonathan Bird, and see if they remember some of the stupid, non-productive workouts we did in the early '90s, and I would be ashamed of myself.
They might give you some shit about that one too.
Oh, would they ever? Yeah. We actually, you remember the old aerobic show? Was it like Taibo, like Billy Blank? I think we did that one day too, at like 6:30 in the morning. They had that like on the TVs with an old VHS set. And,
bet they love that one.
Bad stuff. Yeah. Well, Lucas didn't, because he never wanted to get out of bed, but.
What bucket list courses, if you could pick 3 courses in the world to play, where would they be?
Pebble Beach, and then I would say, good question. That's a tough one. I'd say definitely Pebble Beach, just because of the ocean and so forth. Obviously, Augusta's up there. It's not far from here, but I've actually never, ever been.
Oh, you got to go at least once. Two things everybody says. They can't realize, or they don't realize how hilly it is, and then you see people kneeling down just to touch the grass because it's so perfect everywhere.
Wow, I can imagine. I've heard, it's just guys that I've had have been there, and but I've never seen it in person. So, and I would say, this is going to be a boring answer because everyone would pick it, but I'd say the old course at St. Andrews. Just to have the openness and the variety, and just to get over there. And I'm in Florida, so it's always sunny and hot. And I think sometimes when it's cloudy and rainy and cool, it's like a gift to me.
Yeah, I feel you. So I grew up in Michigan. I'd like to go back every once in a while, just in the winter, for a week, and then that's enough. Okay, I got to get the hell out of here.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, for sure. That'd be my 3.
Let's see. Greatest of all time, Jack or Tiger?
Wow, I'm going to make some serious people mad with that one, because the numbers speak for themselves. But it's a hard question just because of the time that I grew up and stuff. I never got to see Jack play, but I think my answer would be Tiger, just because of no matter what sport it is. I think in today's world, and obviously when he was at his peak, just the level of parity in sports has narrowed so much. Like, no matter what sport it is, even auto racing to whatever, to golf, like, there's so much parity in sports just because of the gene pool and the number of athletes and the technology and stuff, that anyone can beat anyone at any given time. And I think the way he dominated as the game changed and got better and more parity, I think I would have to give him the edge.
Can't argue that one. Last one. What's your superpower?
I want them all. You know what? I'll say this, and I don't know how I achieved it, but it's a gift, and I'm blessed to have it, would be my memory. I can remember stuff from age 3, and I can read things and remember it, and I can see videos and pictures and remember it and things like that. So I'm very blessed from a knowledge standpoint to have quite a significant memory.
Yeah, that's a very, very beneficial thing to have. I know some people the same, and their ability to recall things is off the charts.
Yeah, just details with things and things like that. I can remember every workout and every program, and how it was implemented and how a guy did, and read literature and research and so forth, and have conversations with people and memories and do things with people and be able to remember some pretty special details.
So with all the stuff in your head, I know you got to be planning a book at some point. You got to get it out there and make room for some new stuff.
Yeah. One day, one of my other mentors, Al Vermeil, he's got everything in his head, and he's still to this day trying to get everything out there on paper and everything like that. So one day. Right now I'm too busy. I don't have an interest in it, but one day perhaps we can get started on that.
So do you have any lectures, presentations, classes that you're teaching coming up anywhere soon that everyone listening can check you out? They can go learn more about you, attend one of your classes, anything like that?
Yeah, nothing. Well, right now I'm doing several private internships where I have people from the Dominican Republic and Germany and many other countries, Canada, and I just had a guy from Austria here. So I've been booking myself for these 3 or 4 or 5 day private internships that I do, who are mostly they're Charles's students and so forth. So I've been doing quite a bit of that, which has taken up some of my lecture time. So I won't go and do anything until either April or May, and so I'm just kind of getting situated with that right now. But when I get that set, when I go teach somewhere, I'll let you know, and we can get that out there.
Yeah, let me know. I'll shoot out all over. Are you on social media at all? Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, all that? Blog? You have a website or anything?
I'm on Facebook, but I'm on it for 3 minutes a day, and I am still resisting society and fighting it to this day.
But stay that way.
Still,
keep up a good fight.
I'm trying.
I have it to promote this stuff. So if whatever you're going to want to get out, just send it to me, and I'll send it out to everybody I've got.
Yeah, I am fighting Twitter and Instagram to this day because I like to think for myself. I don't want someone telling me who my friend should be. I don't want telling me who I should vote for, and I don't want someone telling me what I should believe and what I should read. And I like to be pretty autonomous with my thoughts and ideas, and I'm still fighting it today just because of the way that impacts the brain and impacts people's thoughts and ideas and judgment. I'm just I don't want to have a world without mind.
Yeah, absolutely. If someone wanted to get a hold of you, that say they wanted you to speak at something or be an educator somewhere, what's the best way for them to do that?
Email for sure. It is Preston, PRESTONG, so Preston G, at gators.ufl.edu. That would be the most efficient way.
Okay, I'll put that in the notes too. It'll be all over all the promo we do for it. Preston, I know you probably got to run. Thanks for giving the extra time. This has been awesome. You're coming on again, whether you know it or not. I mean, even if I got to drive down there, you're coming on.
Sounds good to me. I'd love to. I appreciate your time and great questions and great thoughts and great insight and great energy, and it's been fun.
Awesome. Well, you have a great day, and thanks a million.
You too. Bye-bye. Okay, train hard.
All right, everybody. Thank you so much for listening to today's show. If you enjoyed it, you can find more information on today's episode and other topics at golf360.blog. There you'll find the show notes and links related to this episode, as well as any other episode that we've done so far to date. If you're interested in improving your game and would like to learn more from yours truly by taking a private lesson, a half-day or multi-day school, club or putter fitting, you can reach me through the blog site or by email, pete@golf360.blog. So some of you may be asking, what is the golf paradigm? All you have to do is click on the homepage while on my blog site to discover how you can start playing better than you ever thought possible. Or you can simply sign up, again, on the blog page for my instructional videos where I give regular tips on all areas of the game to include the swing, club design and fitting, health, fitness and nutrition, the mental aspects, and equally as important, the integration of all those things together. I'm also on social media, and you can find me at The Golf Paradigm. That's PARADIGM. And I'm on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel, also under the same name, The Golf Paradigm. Facebook is usually the best way to reach me for questions and or comments, and I look forward to hearing what all of you have to say.